Airspace to cover for Milroe. Still looking. Firing. Near corner. It's caught! Touchdown, Alabama! Isaiah Bond!
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Play action for Ward. He pumps. He throws open in the corner of the end zone. Touchdown, Washington State. Donovan Ollie.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Spencer Rattler wants to launch a deep one, and it is caught! Juice Wells all the way, touchdown Gamecocks! 72 yards.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Sanders looking wide open, touchdown, Dylan Edwards.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Here's Sanders on first down. He's got a lane. He's down the sideline. Turning on the Jets. Rocket Sanders. Shaking off tacklers. Rumbling inside the 30. And just like that, the Razorback crowd back in. 46 yards.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
DJ's going to airlift it. He airlifts it long, and it is caught at midfield. Bolden with the big catch. Nice. Over the back shoulder. It's good for 40.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Monday and another week. A couple of weeks left in the month of May, including today, the 13th. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak. This is 365 Sports, and we'll have 2 or 3 guests today, including Baylor men's basketball coach Scott Drew, Cole Thompson, who's a part of the SEC Unfiltered, Evan Miya will join us on the men's basketball transfer portal. There's a story today we'll get to, a young man from Utah State to Washington reportedly getting over $2 million. That and more, plus digging into a couple of stories, one that I love from theathletic.com on the transfer portal with a couple of quotes. It's great. If you haven't read it, you should. All right, Paul, let's start. Craig, let's start with a future site for the college football championship. Our good friend Phil Zenzer is lit up on this one. Vegas will host it in 2027, New Orleans in 28, Dallas in 2029, Miami in the month or the year of 2030, negotiating the host title games. If they don't reach a deal, they'll have backup sites in Houston, Phoenix, and also Tampa. Kind of like the same rotation you would see, quite frankly, with the Super Bowl games, too.
Yeah, not a surprise. And look, Las Vegas is getting more and more stuff. I mean, Big 12 Media Days is there for crying out loud. There's, championship being there makes a lot of sense. Keep rotating it around. It's funny to me that Dallas is going to get another one of those before they get another Super Bowl. I don't know why they blame Jerry for the weather so much that happened, but because he can't control that. He can barely control anything. But, I think it's good. It'll be fun in Las Vegas. It'll be a cool place to have it, and probably a place that'll attract more people. Do you want to go to the championship game even though you're not a fan of either of the 2 teams in it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's not a surprise. The same cities that we see listed for pretty much every major event. I mean, there's some outside pockets for, the Final Four sites and things that are a little bit more unique. But when it comes to football, I mean, the only city that seems to really be missing here is like Atlanta as far as the typical stop-ins. Los Angeles, I'd say, would be on that list as well. But beyond that, these are the typical boxes that you check. Tampa, Phoenix, Houston, as alternates. They've all hosted Super Bowls in the past. They've hosted, major events. Phoenix obviously has hosted a big bowl game every year for quite a while now, or the Glendale area. These are the typical cities you look at. Although Las Vegas is unique because for so long it was taboo, and now it's as though everything is going there. They just announced WrestleMania last week is heading to Vegas. You mentioned Big 12 Media Days. Not that that's the same level of event as the others we've mentioned, but still, it's just another event that's headed there that otherwise in years past would have not ever have even thought about the possibility of hosting there. So, yeah, they're going to have had everything outside of the NBA Finals, I guess, here in the next 5 years or so, and that's simply because they don't have an NBA team, although that seems like it's probably going to happen sooner rather than later. We know that the A's are on their way, so the rich get richer, literally.
Hockey
in
is
Vegas.
on its way, yeah.
Hockey's there.
Hockey's there and has hosted Stanley Cups and won Stanley Cups. Yeah.
Yeah. They won't host a World Series anytime soon if the A's are there, but
Right.
still,
That's about it.
You know what? I just got completely flipped on Salt Lake City. They're the ones that are getting the new franchise.
Yeah, Vegas has won an actual cup already.
They're the defending champions until Dallas knocked them out.
The opposite of Vegas, Salt Lake City?
Yes. Yeah. So, by the way, the championship game next January is in Atlanta, and then Miami the following year in 2026 at Hard Rock Stadium.
And Miami will super care about everyone there.
In 2030, where are the Hurricanes playing? We'll see how much of an appetite there is for college football, but obviously it's a destination site. New Orleans is New Orleans. I mean, that's an old go-to. And it is interesting. Dallas obviously looked at more favorably by other leagues than the NFL, where their whole basis for building a stadium originated. That's the one league that seemingly doesn't want to give them anything after that Super Bowl that Paul mentioned. And yeah, I guess things could have been handled better, but I also know it was a freak once-in-a-lifetime weather incident that just so happened to line up timing-wise, and it ruined the week, but that really wasn't Jerry's fault. There's the seating fiasco, though, as well, so I don't know. Maybe that adds up to them just spurning him, but, man, if you don't get a second Super Bowl in that place, I just feel like that's as many events as you've hosted, you'd still rather have hosted a couple of Super Bowls. I feel like that was more of what you were looking for than the CMAs or whatever.
I think it was not even the weather. I know the weather was awful. Don't get me wrong. Mother Nature, we've seen that around here and elsewhere throughout the year. I think it was because they tried to jam another couple of hundred people into that stadium. And remember, let's not forget those temporary seats fell.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So that's a double whammy with them. Yeah.
And the triple whammy, and I think everybody that does this makes it. I think San Francisco made a mistake with it. Look, the Super Bowl needs to be in a pretty tight little area. That's why Vegas was so good for it, and Vegas will be good for everything else because everything's going to be right there in the Strip. It's right there. There's nothing.
New Orleans is a 10-minute bus ride from most hotels.
Yeah, so like everything is not like that big of a deal. But the places that are like Dallas are like it's the North Texas Super Bowl. Like, dudes, you know how big this area is.
Yeah, no, it's so spread out, and so there we are. Those are the upcoming what appear to be the sites outside of Atlanta. And then Miami, and then Vegas would be next in line. Now, speaking of the college football playoff, this was something that was also put out there today. NBC has added an extra regular season NFL game on the weekend of Saturday, Saturday, December 21st. Now, why is that of interest? Because, as you'll see with Chris Vanini, that is the first round of the college football playoff games this year. And so instead of that being what would have been on streaming, they're going to put that game, the NFL game, on NBC. What a day it'll be to sit down and have a football buffet, college and then also the NFL.
Garrett, I'm needing the one shot on me for this one. This is where I'm going to chastise the leaders of college football. There we are, right here. I'm going to look right at the camera. You guys are idiots. You had all this time to own December, and now you've got this really cool new thing coming where you have 3 playoff games on a Saturday, and they're going to be hurt by the NFL ratings-wise because you guys gave them December years ago and couldn't look out in front of you and see what was going on. This is what happens when you capitulate and do stupid things because you're antiquated and you can't figure out how to move forward until you're made to. Stop making decisions with a gun to your head, and the NFL completely took advantage of you, and they're not going to care, and they're not giving it back. So enjoy losing ratings on the most important Saturday of your year in college football because you made this bad decision years ago.
And you know what? The NFL didn't even have to fight for it. They just walked through your back door and took everything in your house and walked out with it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're drawing sides and like picking teams, then I typically be team college football, but I'm a sports fan first and foremost. So great news. Yeah, I get to watch a playoff game in the NFL and a playoff game in college football simultaneously on a Saturday night in late December, right before Christmas. I'm not disappointed about that. I mean, I think we can all figure out a way to watch two things at once, and if one of them sucks, then we got an option on the other TV. But I mean, the NFL has shown that they don't care about college football in terms of, for the most part, worrying about, being out of their way, whereas college football has willingly ducked out of the way of the NFL or outright avoided them at various turns. And so, yeah, there's a difference in philosophies. Obviously, one's the juggernaut, and they can afford to do that no matter what. But, yeah, I think college football kind of being a little weak-minded when it comes to, I guess, marking their territory. Shouldn't be surprised that the NFL's run up on their territory once again, and they had multiple opportunities, you guys said, to kind of carve out their niche and didn't do so for whatever reason. So, I mean, as a sports fan, that's great. I'm not going to complain about that. As a college football fan, I mean, if you care about the ratings that particular game gets, then, yeah, it's going to be hurt, no doubt about it. But, fellas, we got to remind ourselves, we're not TV executives.
Yep.
It's not hurting our pockets. We're sports fans, so yay. But, yeah, for the moneymakers in college football, I'm sure that they winced a little bit when they saw that news because that is going to carve who knows what kind of a dent into whatever game that is, and whatever game that is will also be very important because if it's Alabama, Texas, then I'm sure the ratings will be A-okay, and they'll get 7, 8, 10 million, whatever the number is. If it's, Liberty and Oregon, like we had last year, a non-playoff game, but in this situation would be a playoff game, then, yeah, that's probably going to get carved up by whatever NFL game, no matter what the matchup is.
The NFL game will have 20-something million or more at the minimum. Yeah, you're exactly right. All right, so earlier today, this was of interest. Tomorrow, Baylor Director of Athletics, Mack Roth, will join us for the first time in a couple of months. Baylor now has established its own in-house NIL unit. Now, GXG remains very heavily involved with Baylor and the NIL collective. David Kay, who we've known for a long time, was the media relations director for men's basketball for a long time and now has been a part of the administrative part of the athletic department. He and also Halim will take over that particular part, and this is like changing. They're in it. We've seen what they're doing. Scott Drew, probably among the top 5 when it comes to NIL, when it comes to college basketball. Football had to play a little bit of catch-up, and Dave Aranda admitted part of that was him. But this was interesting. They actually have their own now section that will be NIL starting effective immediately. David Kay will be in studio, we think, here on Wednesday.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to talk to him because I want to know, like, if he has a wish list of how this needs to go. I want to know, like, what the wish list is for somebody who's stepping in to this job and who's seen it. Other schools create it. He's the general manager, which I don't even know what, like, specifically his gear is other than general managing, so that'll be really interesting to hear what DK is doing. And he is a guy who is ridiculously selfless. I'll tell you that. And
he's a grinder.
Yeah, he is. He's really, he's that dude. So it'll be interesting to see how they, morph and change and grow the departments because this is a new thing. And to be in charge of a new thing is exciting and terrifying and all these things at once.
Haneen, by the way, also played a role in building the NIL program at Oklahoma State, so she has some experience there, as Baylor then announces that earlier today.
I mean, congratulations to both of them. I'm not super interested in like the ins and outs of NIL. I think we've discussed that, and there's some that love the that part of the industry and they're fascinated by like how the ins and outs works. And I am interested in some of that, but I don't love how much of a part of the game that it's become and how on the forefront it is. But I know that there's also nothing to change that now at this point, and it is what it is, and that's very much going to be a part of the conversation when it comes to college sports these days. So you better have your ducks in a row, and you better be prepared for handling things as a university, as opposed to the early days that we've seen where it's this weird, strange land of bizarre rules where you're so limited with contact, even though when it boils down to it, you are basically picking the players that you want to play for your university and having to outsource that responsibility to handle that to a collective that is still working with you, but not officially. It was dumb the way this was all set up. So now that everybody's kind of learning the lay of the land, the rules are changing to make a bit more sense. And you are going to see, I think, moving forward, more people who are able to operate fully in-house. Then, yeah, it only makes sense to continue to carve out a space in your athletic department to handle those things. And David Kay seems well-equipped to be the guy getting that call. I don't know much about his partner in crime here, but we'll learn about her, I'm sure as time goes by and meet at some point. So, yeah, congratulations to them. And this is just another sign of, the world we live in now when it comes to college athletics, that there's a whole nother office, a whole department in your building, a whole nother piece of the puzzle that you now have because of NIL, and that itself just continues to grow. So yeah, I think we're going to see this everywhere sooner rather than later, where there's more in-house operations.
Terrence Brooks played at Texas, now all of a sudden entered the transfer portal. There were thoughts about where he might end up, and Illinois is where he ends up to play for the Fighting Illini in the Big Ten.
Kind of out of nowhere. I thought, Tech or somewhere like that. But, man, go spread your wings and fly. Enjoy Illinois, Terrence Brooks.
Yeah, Big Ten money, I guess. No, it was just strange. It was random to me because I wasn't following his recruitment particularly closely, just loosely, and seen a tweet a couple days prior that was indicating he was going to, pick between or was going to visit a couple of different schools, and Illinois wasn't one of those. So I figured he was still, in the process of visiting and was going to be continuing that for, I guess, a little bit longer. But no, then all of a sudden I see the tweet pop up the same day later on that he had committed to Illinois. So, yeah, seems like a really good get for the Illini. Obviously had some good moments at Texas. USC was I was trying to think of was where he was supposed to be visiting apparently. But I guess and then was going to visit Michigan. But then I guess the Illinois visit was so good that he didn't feel the need to. Or, however that worked out. I mean, good for Illinois because clearly you had schools like Southern Cal and Michigan, they were also planning to have him visit. So I don't know what happens with all of that. It would seem you'd shut that down. But, yeah, just on the surface, it's a great get, you'd think, for the Illini.
Very nice pickup. And Terrence Brooks is a guy that was a ball hawk, but at the same time he was it was kind of like, it looked like it was, to me, it just felt that, hey, I'm going to enter the portal, okay. Like one of those things. Texas, of course, has tried to respond with what they have as well,
he's the only starter
both high school, huh?
He's the only starter they lost in the portal.
I know, and we're going to get to that in just a second about returning, not just starting production, but returning production here in 1 second. Speaking of which, here is something, theathletic.com. I mentioned this story about the transfer portal. Bruce Feldman, Max Olson, Sam Kahn, among others, wrote a story. And inside the transfer portal and how it works. So they went and talked with coaches, players, agents, whoever. Here's one of the quotes from a head coach. And this is like my favorite because this is like my life on the highway. It's so out of control because everybody knows there's not any regulations to it. It's like you're on the freeway and there's a speed limit but no cops. I mean, there is no regulatory body like there is in theory, but nobody cares. Don't go to the next one, Garrett. Let's discuss this one.
This is such a, the only rule, Garrett and I just talked about this a couple hours ago. The only rule it appears that there is don't talk about the recruits or how much they're getting. That's the only thing that would really get you kind of in trouble, I guess. Everything else, and look, you'll hear a lot of coaches come out and say, we had people contacting kids on our roster and all these different things. But the thing is, they can't really call them out because there's no way, especially given the size of coaching staffs, that, I could say, nobody in this room right here is contacting recruits on other people's roster. And then Emory could be like, well, not nobody, I don't know what he's doing all the time and all that. So those are the things that you have to worry about. So it's one of those things oh, really? And I heard Coach Emory is certainly sending out some DMs on Instagram for people. So yeah, there's,
It's to me.
It's
how
really
did you say,
complex.
Go ahead, Craig. You respond to that, and then we'll go back to how guys and girls date.
Oh,
now.
look,
No, hold on. Let Craig.
No,
have
I don't have any
go
response
ahead.
to this.
All right,
Yeah,
go ahead.
and
like,
look,
so in other words, DMs are very much involved.
Yeah, like
here, right?
so. The thing, part of the other thing I saw in the article I thought was really hilarious and odd was that coaches will follow a kid on Instagram. If he follows back, that means he's interested. If he likes and you like, well, that's how kids date nowadays. It's weird, man, that's what you're doing in the transfer portal. But I guess it's kind of a similar dance. But yeah, it is such a weird thing. And look, there needs to be structure around it, but I do pity people trying to figure out how to do it without any.
There's a lot of different quotes, anonymous. So these are from head coaches. Here's one from an agent. Now look at this one and read this one. I had a defensive line coach reach out to me over the winter break, and he told me, these are the positions I need to fill. Send me the list of your guys who are willing to enter the portal. I gave him a list. It was as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it. I mean, look, like recruiting was never clean prior. Even when you had rules surrounding recruiting, we know that there was still under the table happenings going on. There was cash envelopes and lockers. There was all sorts of nonsense. There was still the street agents. There was still the specialty coaches, right? And not all of them, not going to paint them all with a broad brush. A lot of them that do really good work. There's also a lot of them that are like, living vicariously or acting as agents for players because they're like, their uncle or whatever. And so recruiting's never been clean. It's always been dirty. We can go back to, Barry Switzer stories of recruiting Billy Sims back in the day. And I mean, on and on and on. That's part of the fabric of college football. But yeah, it's just now that the money's on the surface, and yet there's still this hiding that's necessary. And that's what just blows my mind is that, for all the complaining about it, like there's still people looking for ways to cheat. Like they're still like feverishly looking for ways to cheat. And that part of it just never, ever stops. So yeah, when you have no rules, I guess it's technically not cheating necessarily. And we all know that even the rules that are in place, even if you break those, you can have Jeff Traylor go out and call people out directly on Twitter, and nobody's going to bat an eye or flinch. If anything, he looks like the bad guy in this weird backwards world that we live in where there are no rules. So yeah, I'm not surprised by any of that. And I also, don't feel so much for the coaches when I know that the guys that they're complaining about, they're turning around and going and doing the same damn thing as soon as they needed a defensive lineman. So yeah, there's a lot of messiness when it comes to the talent acquisition now. There's a really simple way to do it, but the powers that be don't want to do that because it would take too much of their bottom line and take too much of their power. And so we all could have the very simple solution that would wrap this all up, and you can make players employees, and we could just cut to the chase and be done with 95% of the nonsense that we talk about. But they refuse to do that because it would just take away too much money, too much control, and it would be too different, I guess, from typical college football. But really, it wouldn't be. I mean, so long as most of the status quo stayed the same, such as you actually are a student at that school, things like that. But yeah, it's a mess. It's been a mess since it began. The whole NIL courtship and recruiting and the way that schools are able to work alongside these collectives or these agents. And so, yeah, if you don't want to, actually put pen to paper and get to a situation where legally there are contracts that prevent some of those things without harsh repercussions, then you're going to deal with the messiness of it all. And I don't really feel sorry because that's the game that you created, so to speak.
All right, Paul, so Urban Meyer all of a sudden thinks they're cheating.
Here's the thing. It's not so much that Urban Meyer said that it's cheating. I don't know what Urban Meyer knows what cheating is. Because here's the deal. If everybody can do it, it's not cheating. So if you can do it without punishment, then it's not cheating. So I don't think he likes it because it would, if he got back into college coaching, it would take away the control that he used to have.
Well, it's very much cheating because it's not going, like you're not supposed to be in guys' DMs and you're not supposed to be doing any of that. So that's very much cheating, but that is also college football.
Yeah, but no, his point wasn't the DMs. It was
his competitive advantage.
It was the pay for play stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I mean, that is cheating. It's not supposed to be what it is. And I know we can parse those words, but he's technically right.
Yeah, but it's not, again, if you're not going to punish it, then and everybody can do it, then it's a lot again, what
it is
what will
cheating, but they just are toothless and they can't do anything
there
about
you
it.
go.
And that's the whole maddening part of it, and why I get sick of talking about like these coaches who are upset about it, because they're the same ones that turn around and then go after that defensive end and his DMs. And so I feel like everybody's kind of hypocritical here.
Very.
And yet they can say, well, we have to do that because the other guys are doing that, and if we don't do that, then we lose our competitive advantage. So everything, Paul, is under the guise of, well, the competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And so that's the excuse for doing it. But yeah, I mean, it is cheating, but it's part of the deal.
Okay, we got Coach Drew coming up.
My point being is that there's nothing preventing anyone from doing it at all, so it's not the same way that like cheating would be before.
Garrett, let me know when the DPS and police stop monitoring I-35, would you?
I'll be on that.
One other quick note, and then we'll get to a couple of other stories in college football. Interesting stuff, like from Bill Connolly from ESPN about the most production back from last year's teams. We'll have that. Also, top 10 records of teams in college football in the last 10 years. We'll have that against top 10 teams. But congratulations, Oklahoma women. Texas won the regular season in softball. OU women won the tournament. Texas came into Waco and swept both the men's and women's track and field titles. 14 so far, Big 12 championships. And also there was 5 teams in the Big 12 are entering the NCAA softball tournament now that those seeds have been put out.
Well, I haven't tallied up all the championships, but Oklahoma and Texas did well for themselves on their way out. And maybe like, I mean, Texas always won sort of the fringe stuff, like swimming and diving, and like that's nothing new. They've had very little in the way of competition there. I think for a while they pretty much dominated that, going on a couple decades at this point. But track and field, sometimes Tech jumps up and grabs that or somebody, but softball here lately, Oklahoma, it looked like this might be Texas's year to win the whole, shebang. But obviously, as you mentioned, they win the regular season and the Sooners beat them to win the conference title. But just point being that they've won a lot of the sports they've kind of been winning, those two, but also won seemingly everything else as well. It just feels that way. And I know that's not quite 100% the way that it's worked out, but it certainly appears that way, especially for Texas. They've had a very
record, 14.
healthy. I would say it's a record. See, there you go. So it feels that way because it is that way, that they've gone out with as big of a bang as possible. So that's bittersweet, certainly for the Big 12 folks who were hoping that those two would struggle in some form or fashion. Don't know what awaits them on the other side as far as winning this amount of titles, although in an era where money talks and money can legally talk, I mean, Texas is well set up as anybody. I think that their leadership change certainly coincides with this success. I also think the leadership change and the ability to go out and just spend is very much a part of why you're seeing them trend so well right now, and foreseeably for a long time into the future now with the SEC affiliation. So, yeah, not what you necessarily wanted to see if you're Brett Yormark and people like that, or people, hoping that Oklahoma State or BYU or just somebody would jump up and take some of these sports. But it does lead to a chapter coming up now where when those two are gone, there will be a void, and that will be in pretty much every single sport, that there will be a vacuum for teams to fill. So we'll see who's able to do that.
320, I think it is, and I don't know if it includes, or 324, I don't know if it includes this year, all-time Big 12 titles, postseason or regular season, from Texas, 225, Oklahoma, 99. Again, not sure if it accounts this year. Maybe it does. Oklahoma State now is the flag bearer with 95. 95 overall titles. Baylor with 89, and then a drop off to KU with 44. So there we are. With
all
that.
of them in basketball.
Yeah. All right, when we come back, Scott Drew, first time he's met with the media today since, he did a one-on-one with a part of what Baylor does in-house, but Scott Drew will join us. Had a hell of an offseason when it comes to the transfer portal. He's next. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be. If your testosterone level drops, it can create some issues. It can create lack of sex drive. It can also create lack of energy, focus, sleep habits, body fat builds up, even if you're active and have a pretty good diet. Dr. Petty can help you out. How? Contact him and his staff, PettyClinicLowT.com. contact them. Tell them I sent you. They will then help you get set up to get your blood work. They'll take care of that appointment for you, get the results, and if your testosterone level is too low, they can put you in a program so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be at pettyclinicalot.com.
Memorial Day sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco is pulling out all the stops with incredible deals you won't want to miss. Picture yourself behind the wheel of a sleek and powerful 2023 Dodge Charger or Challenger RT. Right now, you can drive home with a whopping $14,000 off MSRP. That's right, $14,000 off. How about a 2024 Ram 1500 Limited Crew Cab 4-wheel drive for $11,500 off the MSRP? That's right, $11,500 in savings only at Allen Samuels of Waco.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one, commercial, farm and ranch, or residential. Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports, every weekday, 3 until 6 Central Time. Paul, triple option, 1 until 2, Monday through Thursday. We're now joined by Baylor men's basketball coach, national championship head coach Scott Drew with Craig and Paul, David Smoak as well. So what have you been up to?
Not much. Relaxing, vacation, a lot of fishing, golf, right?
Yeah, no decision making, no recruiting, none of that. Can you try to describe, and I know it's been a while, but just the decision about Kentucky, if you don't mind, and how much maybe a relief off your shoulders, no matter what you would have done, and how much what did that feel like?
Well, first, it's a great compliment anytime people appreciate what you've done, and that's not just from Kentucky, but from Baylor. And as you know, in any big decision in life, and why is it a big decision? Because at the end of the day, I've really grown for 20 plus years spiritually, and Waco is home. It's home to my family. My kids were all born here, and the easy thing always to do is to stay, because that's what you want to do. At the same time, whatever God wants you to do, that's what you need to do and what you're called to do. And really, in that whole process, that's what I was just trying to do, was see His will and where He wanted our family. And the good thing is, He wanted us at Baylor. So once that was done and solved and added, it was very easy, because again, this is home, and we're very comfortable. We feel loved here, supported here. But the great thing also was, people knew, hey, if God's calling you to go, that you got to go where God wants you to go.
Well, Coach, I'm glad I didn't have to send you my last-ditch effort to convince you not to leave, because I would miss you too much. But I was going to say, moving really stinks. It's a pain. There's not as good Mexican food up there as you know. There's lots of things I was going to send, but you have been able to, in all of that, still be able to do your actual job at Baylor when people are calling you to see if you're interested and all of that. Mm-hmm. And you've had a very productive offseason. How much of the excitement around your name and people wanting you other places has kind of helped open up some doors that maybe wouldn't have been open before for recruiting?
Well, I think our staff deserves most of the credit with that, and they've done a phenomenal job. And we've had a lot of staff movement this year, but those guys that had stayed and the ones before they had left had really put us in a good position to be successful. And then Mac and President Linda Livingstone, what they've done with making sure Baylor University in the current climate of NIL and transfer portal is able to be successful and compete for championships. That's extremely important. And then you throw in Baylor's success. I mean, last 5 years, winningest Power 5 program in the country. In the last 4 years, the only team to be a top 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Since 2019, one of 4 schools to win a game or more in the NCAA tournament. The only school to have 3 guys drafted in the top 16 in the last 3 drafts. So much positive things to build off of and to attract recruits to. And then, as you know, anytime that people are talking highly about you in the news, that's a good thing. And a lot of excitement around Baylor University. And then with Eve, Jacoby, Jalen, all possibly drafted this year, and a couple possibly in the lottery. That's all things that have really made it easier to recruit the next players at Baylor University.
Coach, you mentioned that coaching tree, and it's flourishing right now, and 2 big moves this offseason, obviously, with John Jacobs taking over at Florida Atlantic. And then after your Kentucky saga, Kentucky still strikes here in Waco with Alvin Brooks III, obviously bringing him onto Mark Pope's staff. You're no stranger to turnover on staff, but can you just speak to the impact of both of those men and now how you've gone about filling those roles as it was announced last week?
Yeah, so Coach Jacobs has done a phenomenal job ever since he got here, and really did a great job in helping things offensively in particular, and worked with the guards a lot, and recruiting-wise really did a great job identifying not only talented players but people that fit our culture. So really excited for him. FAU got a great coach, and somebody's going to be really, really successful. Coach Brooks is somebody that from day one, you always respected his work ethic. You respected how he did it, and somebody that's been selective. He's had head coaching inquiries and has turned down some of those opportunities and not pursued some of them, waiting for what's best for him and his family. So there's no doubt that very soon in the near future, he's going to be given several more of these opportunities, and hopefully it's one that fits him and his family, because he'll be a great head coach. He's done a great job with us here, and somebody that has no enemies in the profession. Everybody really respects him. So gonna miss those guys. Luke Simon did a phenomenal job as director of ops for us, and I know you guys that have spent any time traveling with us or around us know what a great job he did, and he was able to get a great promotion at Ohio State to be an on-the-floor coach with Jake Diebler, somebody that played with my dad and brother and coached with my brother, and a ton of respect for. So all three of those guys really excited and happy for them.
All right, I'm gonna name two schools, and if you can talk about these players, let me know, because I know not everyone has signed. Miami and Duke.
Yep, what about them?
All right. Norshad Omier, an incredibly good-looking athlete who's plays inside and tremendous hands around the rim. But Jeremy Roach, the guard from Duke as well. How big, and they aren't the only ones, but how big are those two dudes coming into part of your roster?
Well, I think since you brought up Norchad first, somebody that fits our culture, somebody exemplifies culture, joy, Jesus, others, yourself, somebody that's been to a Final Four his sophomore year at Miami. He's had success. I joked the day he was born, he averaged a double-double. So somebody that's produced at every level he's been, and a great teammate. Everybody that knows him, so appreciative for him, the person, the man. He's going to be a great fit, and the people in the community are going to really enjoy getting to know him. At the same time, Jeremy Roach is somebody that's been to a Final Four as well, somebody that we've played against and seen up close and personal this year. Tremendous player who, when the game's on the line or the bigger the moment, the better he performs. So we know how important guard play is in college basketball. So you bring in two people that have experienced success at the highest level, yet neither have won a national championship. So they're hungry to have that opportunity and really fit in well with, again, our culture and what Baylor University is about. Couldn't be any more pleased to have Jeremy and Norchad a part of our program.
Particularly for Jeremy and the young guards you have coming in, not to mention Norchad, but I mean, for him as a guy who is you just watch him at Duke. I mean, he's a leader in every sense of the word. For those young guys you have coming in, how great of a pairing opportunity is that?
Well, you definitely want to have upperclassmen that not only are talented and good players, but more importantly are good leaders and good teammates, because coaches know this. Players listen to players more than they listen to coaches. And if you get the right player-led team and the right player leaders, that's when your teams achieve the most. So both of those guys are going to be great leaders, great teammates, and that's going to make it a lot easier for all the younger guys and new guys on our team.
Scott, we've asked you this before, but is the part of building a roster more difficult than ever before with the transfer portal, with the way it is?
Yeah. Well, I think yes, to answer the question. But I think a couple things. One, this year the recruiting calendar is a little easier, so that makes it easier to handle. The second thing is, now that we've seen how things are trending and going through the experience last year for everybody, I think it makes it a little easier to go through. At the same time, replacing over half your team is not something that any of us are used to. We're used to players coming in, being here a couple of years, graduating. Yes, you'll have a couple one-and-dones, or people leave early, or people transfer, but 75% of your team, if you have a good culture, staying 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and graduating. So again, replacing that many guys in a short period of time, because really you don't know who's going pro, who's transferring, who's coming back until season ends. And then you have that 6-8 week window to not only figure that out, but then add people. And it used to be you'd recruit guys for 2-3 years, 4 years. So you knew them and you knew just how they would fit in. Now you have to make those decisions a lot quicker. So not only are you watching a lot of film and talking to a lot of people, but then you got to try to see how the guys you're recruiting, what your current team thinks of them, and if they would want to play with them. So it's just a lot more work at the end of the season over what it used to be, which is the end of the season, you might add 1 or 2, but you're not adding 6, 7, 8 guys.
Scott, I know this is probably not something you have to deal with, but how in the world, how difficult is it to keep up with making sure these student athletes, as they transfer as many times as they do, are continuing the path towards a degree? And making sure, is that something that, I know compliance, Chad Jackson, whatever,
Yeah.
How difficult, is that even something you have to deal with?
Oh, you definitely have to deal with it, and we're really blessed. The people in academics have done a phenomenal job for us. Josh, Ramon, compliance, Chad, Mabry, Lauren, their group, and specifically Lauren and Josh. I think I talk to them as much as anybody on our staff. So they've done a phenomenal job in not only identifying who we can recruit, but then once we're recruiting them, how we can make sure they're eligible, graduating, working on a master's degree, picking the right degrees, and that's extremely critical. So couldn't thank them enough.
Scott, is this the first time since maybe you got here that you've had this much of a staff refresh in total?
I definitely think so. I might have to get down into Matt's in here. He can figure out if there is was another time. But to recent history, by far and away, it's the most turnover we've had, and that's why I mean, Tweety Carter, Jared Nunes, Ty Beard. Jason Smith, those guys did yeoman's work through the transition as people were going through the interview process, because not only were you doing that, but you had to put together a roster. So those guys really did a great job stepping up and making all this possible.
Are you glad that Coach Jacobs didn't take a Big 12 job?
Yeah.
That is one thing for sure I was glad about.
Coach,
and ironically, Coach Jacobs said once he got the job, and I didn't take a Big 12 job. I said, thank you, Coach.
Very true, very true. Coach, you don't strike me as the type that goes out seeking attention, but you also don't shy away from it when you do get it. You see the benefits in it. Obviously, I think it'd be beneficial for you guys that you had so much attention on you with Louisville or Kentucky, whoever it's been showing you attention. But just personally, what was that process like to have such a huge spotlight on you there for 2, 3, 4 days, tracking flights, all the stuff that went into that? Just on your end, was that a unique process, or just how did you kind of view all of that as you sorted through it?
Well, I'm somebody that, I can't go to bed until my text messages are read, my emails are caught up, my WhatsApp and all that. So, anything like that. I remember when we won the national championship, there was over 1,000 text messages, and you kept trying to answer them, and you get it down to 600, and then you take a break, go to the bathroom, and you come back and it's at 800, 1,000. You're like, man, I'm never going to get this done, But anyway, stayed up all night, knocked it out. So I say all that to say that was actually good practice to go through what I went through in that short period of time, because not only are you trying to get resolution there and what God wants for you and your family, but also making sure that you're there for your current players and addressing their needs and being the head coach they've asked you to be and entrusted you with, and at the same time dealing with recruiting on who we're recruiting, who we're bringing in, what we're looking for, what our needs are. So not a lot of sleep during that period of time, but again, couldn't be more blessed and pleased to have not only great family and friends and loved ones to support you and help you, but also a staff to help make it where at the end of the day, we've won titles, we've won championships, and our staff knows that each and every year you're not going to win the last game, but having a chance to do that is really exciting, and then doing it with a group of guys that you really enjoy being with, and we were able to put that together last year. And this year seems to be the same, which is really exciting.
You mentioned your faith in the decision-making. Was there one other single piece of advice that maybe stood out to you more than anything else that anyone said to you?
A lot of great advice, and actually stuff that once that was over, talking to a couple of our players, just deciding what to do. And I remember Caleb Warner sitting in my office, well, how'd you do it? And so anyway, just having the opportunity to share with spiritually seeking what God's will was, and then what's the best for my family. And then from there, trying to discern that and make the best decision for that.
Final thing, you mentioned your staff. I know that Jared Nunes stayed. He's a part of it, a very big part of it, along with some others that were a part of your staff. But how much did he, being around during the time when others are leaving, I texted him the other day and he said, I'm trying to get on vacation. Does he does he now get a chance to take a vacation yet?
Yeah. We're probably a week away from talking vacation time still. but
gotta get the NBA combine over with.
He definitely has earned a good night's sleep. That is for sure. And one of the best things is, I mean, Jared, I've known him since 1997. I mean, we go to the Sweet 16 in 1998, but you've known him for close to 30 years. So it's important to have people around that you know, trust, and love, but also people that know you, and a lot of times remind me of certain things like, hey, this is how we did it before. Remember that work, coach? And just knowing what, having such a good feel for our current players, and then knowing the ones coming in who would fit in with them, really did a great job during this time for sure.
Well, now you can sleep because the Big 12 next year won't be more loaded than they've been the last several years, right? Only, good Lord, what's going on, man? It's going to be unbelievably fun to watch.
Yeah, you know, every year I seem like a broken record. I'm like, the Big 12 is the best conference, and I didn't think it could get any better, and look what it is now. So, but again, you look at a lot of these way too early polls, and for the top 5 teams or Big 12 teams or whatnot, and it's going to be another exciting year, and I know fans love it. We'll be done with the Foster, everything. I know we played games in there, but it'll be so nice at the end of summer to move in there, have the practice facility and everything up and going, and that's such a big home court advantage for us, as we all know last year, and really excited to have a full season in there.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Scott Drew, Baylor's national championship head coach with his men's basketball, on many things. He had a media session right before he joined us today here on 365 Sports.
Yeah, that was good stuff as usual from Coach Drew. This is going to be a very interesting roster. It's going to be a very interesting Big 12. They're going to beat up on each other, like really, really badly, and it's going to be tense to watch every night. Even if you're watching two teams you don't really have a dog in the hunt, that game's probably going to be really good to watch. They
need to win games better. They need to win more games that first weekend, though, don't they, in the tournament?
Yeah, they do. Sometimes I don't think that's indicative of a conference as a whole. I just think that, I mean, everything in the tournament is so, this is who the committee puts you against, and sometimes it's like, well, this is the one kind of team that we can't play in the first weekend.
They're good about the matchup.
You can't do that, because it's going to be good. You didn't, if you're a team that doesn't shoot a lot of threes, and then you play a team that might be, you can be about 4-13, and the team that, you're playing at the 13, that's all they do is shoot threes. So if they get hot, you can't really match it. So it's a bad matchup and you lose, but does that mean your conference was bad or you weren't as good? No, it just means that you drew the short end of the matchup stick.
But they still need to get into the second weekend more teams than they did.
No,
you're right.
True.
Overall, playing 20 league games and having a bunch of teams. But we remember the story, Craig, last year at the end of the year when Clemson's head coach made a comment that he goes and beats Baylor. about, the RPI, whatever. It's a hell of a conference. It should be interesting to see how they do starting next year with all the incoming teams too.
Yeah, the ACC felt disrespected, and they proved that to a certain point by having multiple teams go deeper, and the Big 12 did not have a good showing overall. A lot of teams losing far earlier than you expected them to. So I do think, I think just starting with Baylor, that's a team that needs to go deeper than it has in the last couple of years. I think that is obviously the goal, but that's not been the case the last couple seasons. So they need to get out of that first weekend, I think, just for their own sake and own momentum and feel around the trajectory. But yeah, things are looking great right now because Scott Drew's back and he seems content and at peace with his decision. That was a wild week of just rumors and flight tracking and assumptions that he was taking that job. And we'll never really know for sure how close that came to coming to fruition, but at the end of the day, he's still here at Baylor. So that's a great thing for the university, but he obviously has a lot of turnover with the coaching staff and just the roster and things to deal with. So we'll see how they're able to handle all that, but you'd expect they're going to be top 5, top 10-ish looking team next year. Same thing for Kansas, same thing for, however many others in the league, and you'd expect they're going to be one of the best leagues in the country, if not the best league in the country. But if you're going to beat your chest about that, then you need to have teams going deep, or at least a team there at the very end that's hoisting that trophy. And that's really why we didn't talk about the Big 12 being the best league, because the number of seeds they got over the last few years, or the number of eyeballs on the product or things like that. We talked about it because Texas Tech played for a title, KU won a title, Baylor won a title. You had teams that were attacking that championship and grabbing it, and that's really what it boils down to. We don't talk about the SEC being the dominant force in football because of all the weeks in the AP Top 25, which is kind of rigged anyways, or the number of draft picks, although that is a tool you can use. We mostly talk about it. The narrative mostly started because they won national titles, pure and simple as that.
A bunch of them.
Yeah, and then you add on all the other stuff and you go, and then you look at the draft picks and you look at just, it truly is that way. But the narrative there started for the Big 12 because a Baylor jumped into the mix and a Texas Tech jumped in the mix and played for it when it was just kind of Kansas there for the most part. So, you add in all of this, the competitive battles in the regular season, and it's got all the makings of being the best league, but I didn't quite show that towards the end of last year. So, there's definitely, I think, some proving that can be done this season throughout the league. And, how it looks post-Oklahoma and Texas, I think Arizona is obviously a very good trade-off. And, we'll see about, the rest of the crew that comes rolling in and what they're able to do initially. But I think the Cats are a great addition, and I'm excited to see what this league looks like and how competitive it can be once again, because I know there are very high expectations.
All right, when we come back, the 4 o'clock hour, which teams in the Big 12 and around America have what is called the most returning production from a year ago, whether it's from the transfer portal additions or what you have coming back? Big 12 with 3 teams inside the top 10. Where are the others? And who are the teams that were hurt the most? I think you could probably guess on a few of those. That's next. This is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com, the Central Texas marketplace just off I-35 in Waco. The average MRI is $1,100. Let's see, I've been in there 3 times. One for my back, one for my lower back, and one also time I had an MRI on my abdomen. Ideal MRI has a state-of-the-art imaging machine to make sure the evidence is there for you and your doctor and those who read whatever MRIs you have. And I have had, every time I've had an MRI, by the end of the day, sometimes it's 6:30 or 7 at night, I've had somebody call me to give me the diagnosis or what the readings were, to clear your mind on something that maybe you thought was there. If it's a ligament, if it's a muscle, if it's something that's not supposed to be there or something that's missing, whatever it can be, that image machine at Ideal MRI is going to find it or not. And they're going to also charge you $497 when the average is $1,100. Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff inside the Central Texas marketplace off I-35 in Waco, idealmri.com.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Carry On Solutions is a full-service IT management service provider and provides professional services for businesses servicing clients in the U.S. and globally. They are authorized partners with Microsoft, Quest, Veeam, NetApp, HP Enterprise, and Cisco Duo. Whether you are outsourcing IT services, merging companies, or wanting to tackle cybersecurity challenges, contact Carry On Solutions. We are IT. Call or email Dave at 832-437-0138 or sales at Carry On Solutions. That's CARRION Solutions.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
So Bill Connolly from ESPN, pretty neat. He does a lot of stats. The updated 2024 returning production rankings in college football. This includes, as of I think a day or two ago, anybody that's entered or joined a team in the portal who was on somebody else's team, so his production counts for whoever he might be playing for now. Iowa State, we knew that. We didn't know they were at the top, but we knew Iowa State had a chunk back. Oklahoma State, a nice chunk back. And then Baylor, we knew they had a lot of players, time, whatever, coming back. Just how much of that is enough talent to get them to a bowl game this year?
Well, considering that, they did make one. Virginia wasn't. I'm looking at the teams on the list. A lot of these teams, a lot of talent coming back, weren't very good.
Iowa was good enough.
Iowa was good. Iowa State was good. Stanford wasn't good. Oklahoma State was really good. Virginia Tech was improved. Rice was better than they have. Is that Rice? I'm seeing there. Yes. Sorry. Virginia.
Mice.
Virginia wasn't very good. Hawaii wasn't very good. USF wasn't very good.
So about 6 or 7 of those teams are a lot of players back from a team. And I hate to say this, but I had a high school coach one time tell me, I said, you have 20 returning starters. Yeah, we were 0-10.
Yeah.
You don't sometimes want that. He was joking in a way.
No, I talked to a high school coach one time that said, you lost 20 starters. And he's like, I don't miss 2 of them.
Yeah. I mean, there is some of that. I mean, you want to have turnover, and some of these schools weren't good, but I think you point to Baylor or you point to Iowa State in particular, and you could say, well, it's good to have returning production because you were really suffering from a lack of experience last year, and now you have returning experience. So in the case of Baylor, like you look at what they did last year and you go, yeah, that was a 3-9 season. Why would you want most of that team back? Well, because a lot of the guys are getting their heads kicked in where redshirt sophomores and redshirt freshmen are true freshmen. And so the thought is that they come back now with that experience and that they will be better. But this isn't the end-all, be-all, but it is at least something of interest to look at. And the good teams that have a lot of guys coming back, well, you feel pretty great about them because it's already proven successful and they've got most of those guys back. So I think with Oklahoma State, that's especially encouraging that you have so much coming back, considering you finished second in the league last year and you won 10 games. So that's very promising for them. With Iowa State, you won 7 games, but you had a young team, young quarterback. You had the gambling issue that kind of just, I guess, didn't derail you clearly, but it definitely messed with just sort of the feel around the program initially before the season started with and threw you for a little bit of a loop. Let's say that. It threw you for a loop, and you had to make up for the fact that all of a sudden you were missing multiple starters and contributors because of this unforeseen gambling situation. So for them to still finish 7-6 and have a boatload of that team coming back, I think that plays really well in the minds of Cyclone fans that they should be expected to take a step up and win, 8 or 9 games and compete for the title this year. I mean, if you look at where they finished last year, 2 of the teams that finished above them aren't in the league anymore, and the only other one was Oklahoma State. So I think you feel great about that. So, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, I didn't know that they were 1-3 in the entire country. But if you wanted to go ahead and predict them to be in the Big 12 title game, I don't think that's a crazy prediction. I understand Utah, I understand Arizona, but, if Iowa State, Oklahoma State's entirely possible. And then with Baylor, like I said, I think them in particular, that's just they had so much youth that you hope that the experience makes them a better team in the long run. And I'd imagine it's just a mixture of the same cases for everybody else on this list, but we obviously know a bit more about all of those 3. But it's always interesting to look at. There is some correlation, as Bill points out in his explanations, for those who have wondered about, what exactly does this mean? It doesn't guarantee success by any means, but a lot of the teams that were at the top of this list last year ended up being pretty successful because returning production can be a huge benefit for you. So, it's always interesting to see this list.
Iowa State bowl game, Oklahoma State bowl game, Virginia Tech bowl game, USF was 7-6 bowl game, and Iowa. So 5 of those
Rice
10,
went to bowl game.
and Rice to 6 of those 10 returning from teams that already were able to make a bowl game last year.
Bill Connolly, meanwhile, the one who, at least for me initially, was the one to introduce the idea of relegation into college football, and not push it, but throw that idea out there and promote it as a concept maybe that college football could pivot towards, although, that seems very unlikely at this point, and yet we seem closer to that possibility than ever before because, quite frankly, any possibility other than the way they've always done things is closer than ever before. But, yeah, he also is – it's just interesting because we've talked a lot about that here lately, somebody that's championed that. So I always enjoy his work and when we've had him on from time to time.
I've seen a lot of people do things like we did the other day. We were trying to figure it out, but I mean, relegation for college football, if you look at the way that the Premier League and all that works, is that there's, the reason it works that way, there's so many teams. I mean, the Premier League alone, you think about, Great Britain and the British Isles, that's not that really big of a place, but every town has a football club. Everyone has one. So it's not like the NFL where there's 32 teams. So they had to come up with a system that was effective, that worked. So that's why for college football, because there's so many teams, that relegation seems like it would be more feasible than it would be in any other.
How many years with football in Europe? Is it every year, or is it a 3-year average?
Every year.
Okay.
It's every year.
All right.
But then, with that, there comes a lot of other questions. It's not. It wouldn't be an exact carbon copy. My whole point last week was don't call it a super league if it includes the bottom feeders. Like that was just my whole point. If you want to call it like the major league, if you want to call it League One, if you want to call it whatever, but just for me, my interpretation of Super League, and when I hear that, I'm thinking of what soccer tried to create before fans lost their minds, which was all the best teams, and that's what it was. It was going to be the elite of the elite. So when I hear Super League, me personally, I consider that to be like the elite of the elite, and so therefore, it doesn't include a couple, I don't know, let's like a dozen teams from those two leagues, the SEC and the ACC, or the SEC and the Big Ten combined. And that's where I was coming from. Now, somebody else can consider it differently, but I just don't think you can consider it to be the best of the best and not really be the best of the best.
You cannot have
solely.
teams that are not a part of those two conferences, who are not a part of so-called Super League or whatever, just because they weren't born into a conference.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's what you're saying. There's a lot of teams.
To me, that's the best of the best. The Premier League is the best of the. They've earned it there, and they were the best.
If you're
of the
not
best.
a part of the Premier League in college football, do you get the same amount of money if you're like on that next level, or are you going to get?
Of course not.
Okay.
By the way, one of the comments on that video that we did was he was stop picking on Vandy.
I even said that.
I said that. We're using the example of Vandy, but he said he used the example. Look, Tulane and Georgia Tech were both SEC members as well, and you know, like you got to throw them in there. Like, well, yeah, but they were dumb enough to leave. You know,
right? Yeah, benefit of hindsight. You know, decades later, Tulane would still have been in the SEC. But no, I mean that was obviously a different time, different place, different circumstances. But I mean, to that person, if they ever watch again, I said at some point, because I knew we were picking on Vandy, but they were just the easy target.
There's only a couple we can pick on, like Vandy and Rutgers. And
well, we just said there's
Northwestern.
And with the example that we were doing of trying to create, like, okay, these teams have done something, these teams have not. And again, you know, it's different. Like, understand the structure and the money and the way the organizational goals at each university is different. But Vandy's the easy example in the SEC because they're the ones who seem the least likely to do it out of all the teams in that league.
Let's face it, they are not like Alabama and Georgia and so forth. And so, yeah, I mean, if you were to take a bunch of teams from other leagues and put them in there, they'd take that spot, but that just so happens to be where they are. But to be fair, I also picked on Arkansas. And I also picked on I picked on A&M a little bit.
South Carolina.
South Carolina. I said all of them would not be in the type of a league that I'm talking about. They would have to earn their way in. They wouldn't automatically just get that selection. So I was fair. I just said the whole Big 12 wouldn't be a part of it. So we were fair. We were carving it down, and you had to cut somewhere. But, yeah, we were definitely self-aware of how easy of a target Vandy can be because they're just sort of the default answer, but they certainly aren't alone in that conversation.
And we were at least 5 or 6 times saying this is not to pick on Vandy, but we were. Cornelio, any sort of relegation would flat out kill quite a few programs.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to it. I mean, again, it wouldn't be if they ever went down that road, which I don't know if that'll ever be the case. I have a hard time, as much as we talk about TV ratings and the money and all of it siphoning up of there's still going to be a need for broadcasting games. There's still going to be a need for these communities to thrive and have these types of investments locally and for players to have spots, guys. Like you're just going to just send players into the ether world because they don't cut it at this certain 22, 24 team level or 40 team or whatever it may be. 40 team's not a super league. That's my whole point of the conversation. It's not a super league. But, I mean, I don't buy into the whole, everything else is going to shrivel up and die. I don't believe that. I think that's just fear-mongering. I think there's going to be a place for all the programs that are out there. Now, are some going to have drastically different futures than they expected? Potentially, but I still don't think we know for sure what any of that truly looks like. And as much as we assume the motivations of Greg Sankey or Tony Petitti or whoever, who really knows besides those folks of what the end goal looks like for them? It does feel like there is going to be a different separation of some sort, but does that result in everybody else just withering up and dying on the vine? Absolutely not. So I think that's just overly dramatic.
That's how I feel about wholesale canceling of sports, which I do think is that's a long down the line threat.
It's a valid concern.
It's a valid concern.
Yeah. But when we're talking about football's not going anywhere.
Football's not going anywhere any place. If you're worried about your football program getting canceled, they must literally be causing ecological damage to your area. There's there's no way that you could. Like, they're just not, because that's the one that's going to bring in the most money. And then you move on down the line, and look, that's why there's protections for Title IX. And look, everybody's like, well, the settlement could lead to canceling sports. Well, I think that's where some of the work with Title IX will help in that, they're not going to cancel a lot of sports. They're just going to have to accept the reality that there's not going to be as much of a money grab at the top, and they're going to have to distribute that down. So what they're like, anytime you hear I would caution anybody on anything when you hear the panic side of it, like, well, we're just going to have to cancel sports. You're like, yeah, but you have a football facility that spent $3 million on putting laser tag or something in there. Like, if you don't do those things into the future, and you can take that $3 million and don't put those there, you can put those into softball or whatever, and everything should be fine. You just can't exorbitantly spend on one thing anymore.
Right. Yeah. Think about fans revolting against a sport that right now is the number 2 sport in America.
Yeah, it's very popular. Now, the concern is that you don't make that same type of money. That's the whole thing with these conferences and these TV payouts. There is a legitimate concern there. I'm just saying the overall, like, oh my gosh, everybody not named these 40 are going to fall off a cliff in football. Monetarily, to some extent, sure, but I still think the Big 12's doing A-okay. Like, they're not making Big 10 money or SEC money, and probably aren't going to unless they win national championships. But I think they're still going to have very healthy programs. They're just not going to be able to – I think the thing that people are having a hard time coming to grips with more than anything is just the idea that their team may not be able to, quote-unquote, compete on the same level as Ohio State, whereas before you always believed that you could in some form or fashion. Even though the Buckeyes had more money than God and, more fans and all that, you still knew that, like, any given Saturday you could maybe go and match up and line up and beat them because there were still rules that kept you fairly somewhat in the same ballpark, whereas in the next several years – with all of the changes, you're living in completely different worlds. And that's just that kind of a separation is more of the realistic separation, I feel like, that people are alarmed for, because you just want to feel like you're competing at that top level, that level 1, so to speak. But I know we've gone off on a tangent here.
Yeah, this was about production returning, but it ended up being a great conversation. And now let's look at the remaining, other than Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Baylor. Here are the remaining or incoming included Big 12 teams with their production. Colorado State, I'm not going to give you all of the numbers. They're on the left-hand side. Colorado, 17. Then you have 3 teams in the 30s, West Virginia, Arizona, TCU. Utah and Arizona State in the 40s, BYU at 54. UCF, Cincinnati, and Tech in the 60s. Houston, 61% returning. And then Kansas and Kansas State with 59% returning production from a year ago. Those are the remaining Big 12 teams.
I would also say that Kansas State in particular has added some production from, they took some from Colorado and added it to them, that 71% with Dylan Edwards. So, yeah, they may not have a lot returning.
Plus, you need to multiply Jalen Daniels by 2 or 3 because of games missed.
And then, look, you have Will Howard that left, but you have Avery Johnson who's going to replace him, and you already kind of know how that's going to go. So, yeah, well, I don't know. It's an interesting metric to see, because some of the teams, Colorado is 71% of their production returning, but most of that offensive production was between about 4 players.
Yeah.
It really was. I mean, so they didn't have a lot, so it's weird because it's a really hard metric to make even for everybody.
Well, it's not like it's the end all be all. It's just it's a fun thing to be able to look at and consider, along with various other, statistics or metrics that you want to put in your little formula to help you spit out what you think a team's going to look like. But it is a valuable thing to see, especially, like I said, when there's good teams that have a lot returning, that should indicate that they're going to be pretty good again. Or if you look a little deeper, like we were saying with, an Iowa State of having so much back from a team that was able to get to a bowl game despite a little bit of a hiccup there at the beginning of the season. I mean, that's boding well for you. So, yeah, I mean, interesting to see Kansas State at the bottom of that list, but yeah, I think you still feel really good about where they are. They definitely lose some big-time contributors, though. I mean, you don't just lose Ben Sinnott and guys like that and not feel it whatsoever.
BB,
no matter how good your quarterback is. So yeah, I think that's worth taking into consideration. Texas Tech does not have a lot of returning production back, which is something I had seen a few months ago, but that's still just interesting given sort of where they are in the landscape of things. So I don't know how to quite read that, frankly. But yeah, it's interesting to look through and kind of come up with your own feeling on what exactly it means.
None of this might matter. It depends. Maybe somebody who did not have any returning production ends up jumping into a different stratosphere. Now, here's a list of the teams that are not a part of the Big 12 for next year, and then just some notable names. SMU would be 11th, 78%. We've discussed what Rhett Lashley and company have coming back. Georgia at 28. Texas and A&M right there next to each other. And then Oklahoma, 53rd. This is out of 131 schools. Ohio State, LSU, that's okay. Then look at the ones you knew. Alabama had their roster rated plus the transition. 100. Washington, same thing, 126. In Michigan, 130. All three had coaching changes and or a retirement, and they're at the bottom of the list.
Well, and they had massive players. Look, Washington had a ton of players, before you even talk about transfer portal, in the NFL. Michigan had a ton of players in the NFL. Alabama had a ton of players in the NFL. And then you throw the portal on top of that, it makes it that much more daunting. LSU is not so surprising considering that Jane Daniels was most of the offense, and the two guys he threw the ball to, the three first-round offensive talents they had, not a shocker. And then they lost, Logan Diggs, the running back in the transfer portal. So I would say of the 41% they lost, I think I just told you about 29% of it.
LSU is going to be really interesting, man. They lost a lot of production. Yeah. And they're pretty far down, but not like, obviously the 3 of the 4 playoff teams, only Texas is sitting there somewhat respectably returning most of their roster. And, yeah, it's hard to imagine a scenario where Alabama, Washington, or Michigan are just right back in that playoff based on just the amount of talent that they lost. But, it's doable, I suppose. But I think it's going to be a real uphill battle, and that's one of those things that this sort of can lead you to conclusion-wise is, you can replenish, but it also takes into account transfer portal and things like that. So, it's going to be an uphill battle to try and get back to where you were if you were Alabama, Washington, and Michigan, not even taking into account the coaching changes at all 3 of those places. So, that'll be a hill to climb. I think Texas is set up really well still for their entry into the SEC. They did lose a lot of talent, but, some of your main – as much as you're going to miss, the big uglies on the defensive line or, a defender here and there, and obviously receivers, I think some of those spots you feel pretty good about just replenishing, especially, losing an Adonai Mitchell or an Xavier Worthy. You may not replicate them exactly, but I think you're going to have enough tools in the cup and in the chest to be able to at least come close to that. So I think Texas, I do eye them a little bit because I do think that they had a really good run and had a really nice roster, and they are, getting hit with some notable departures. But I think they're about set up as well as you could possibly have hoped for entering the SEC in year number 1.
Well, they have the positions. They lost a ton the draft. We know about that, but also they replaced some of that. They did scratch and claw to try to get people back to help them on the defensive line. Not back, but in the portal. They got the kid from Arizona. Then they picked up the late one from Oklahoma, too. Let's not forget they have players at the high school level, but you almost forget about them now because of the way it is.
The biggest deal, I think, with Texas coming back, it's not going to be their offensive production. I think they've replaced pretty ably, especially when you talk about Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden and Silas Bolden all coming into that wide receiver room. Those are guys who have produced at very high levels on the other places they've been. It's going to be tough, not just the defensive tackles, but they lost Jalen Ford. They lost, the middle of that defense is going to be
Brooks.
Yeah. Terrence Brooks. That the middle of the defense to me in particular is going to be the most interesting thing. Can they stuff the run at the level they did last year? That's going to be hard to replicate. If they can just get but here's the thing. They kind of overdid it in that they did more than they needed to win most games in stopping the run last year. If they can kind of get close, they'll still be totally fine.
All right. It's 4:22 around the corner. Cole Thompson for SEC Unfiltered, his thoughts about, I reached out, honestly, to a lot of guys this weekend, and I said, hey, can we just come on and talk football? And we'll have guests throughout the next several days that will just be talking football. And one of them is Cole Thompson from SEC Unfiltered, Matt Fortuna tomorrow, among some others. This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, Live crawfish, 30-pound sacks of live crawfish available if you order by calling them or dropping by their location on Lake Air Drive by Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And if you do that, you can go by and pick up the live crawfish. How many pounds you might order, 30-pound sacks are available, and you can do that anytime after 4 o'clock on Friday and and when they're open on Saturday. Corn on the cob, sausage, you want crab legs, they have that, the marinade, the seasoning, all of what you need for a crawfish boil, and it's there for you. There's a kind of a bucket that they have that's on the floor where it has corn on the cob, the crab legs, it has sausage, it has everything you want for your crawfish boil, and order the live crawfish 30-pound sacks. It's Waco Custom Marketplace, full-service butcher shop and bakery at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. It is time to announce the 14th annual Academic All-Stars team right here on 365 Sports. Hi, this is David Smoak. Our 20 Academic All-Stars have an overall grade point average of 103.2. 5 members are headed to a military academy. There are 6 valedictorians and 2 salutatorians. Our 2024 Academic All-Stars team includes Ryder Bagley from Groesbeck, Chilton's Colton Bossy, West Cole Bryant, Casey Cavanaugh from Troy, Lorena's Emily Flores, Whitney's J.C. Green, Franklin's Sarah Heisler, Academy's Madeline Hammonds, Waco High's Alexis Hookham, Kate Humphreys from Clifton, Marshall Cobb of Midway, Temple's Claire Little, Salado's Case Magin, Houston Powers of Crawford and Thorndale's Emily Reeves, Landon Richardson of Lampasas, Milford Shimon Rogers Jr., Brady Schultz of Abbott, March Monty Swainer, and Avery Thaler from Fairfield. The 2024 Academic All-Stars team is brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, Westdale Asset Management, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Ray Broker, Air Conditioning and Heating, HEB, Award Specialties, Healer Printing, Wolf Florist, Baylor Club, and the Waco Foundation. We will honor the 14th annual Academic All-Stars team at our annual banquet, Wednesday, May 15th at the Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium. We're proud to recognize these elite student athletes in Greater Central Texas, our 14th annual Academic All-Stars team, right here on 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Cole Thompson, SEC Unfiltered, joins us on 365 Sports. And by the way, there is an interesting story about North Carolina Board of Trustee and what he's saying about the ACC. We'll get to that soon after we are off the air with Cole Thompson, who joins us on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul and David Smoak. Cole, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. With the way that the SEC is built, the incoming of Texas and Oklahoma, no divisions, can you really figure out who the conference champion is if the schedules are sometimes uneven?
Yeah, Smokey, it's challenging because if you definitely are going to have your favorites, naturally based off of what you do with the recruiting process and the transfer portal. I mean, when you look at Georgia, this is a team that feels like they were about ready. They feel like they've got the guy that's about ready to break even on blackjack table, and on his last hand he goes all in and then doubles down and then hits 21, then hits 21 again, then decides to watch the banker break and makes all their money back because they've revamped their entire roster overnight. But at the same time, it does feel more open than ever, even with 2 newcomers coming on in. Because the strength of schedule is going to play a major factor in all these teams and their ability to make it to the postseason. And at the same time, what you look at in terms of when you play certain games also really play a major dividend. I mean, I look at a team like Tennessee in week 2. They have to go travel to Charlotte, North Carolina to take on an NC State roster that kind of is flying underneath the radar with Dave Duran. They always have a great defense, and they're breaking in a new quarterback in an area where this is going to be a major test for them going into week 4 when they travel to Norman, Oklahoma, and it's a reunion for Josh Heupel. But that could be a game that ultimately determines could they make it to the college football playoff. It's a giant catechism of just chaotic craziness this year where you know that there are going to be some front runners, you know there's going to be some dark horses. And then I love the term coin flip teams because if that's how it feels with a lot of these programs that are 8-4, 9-3, maybe sneaking in as a backdoor 10-2 if one player breaks out. So it does feel like any given Saturday you can see that major upset. But also, naturally, there are some teams that are a little bit more well-equipped to contend in 2024 than ever before.
Cole, the Ole Miss boosters and NIL collective stepped up huge to help build that roster and do something that Ole Miss hasn't done in quite a long time, and maybe win the SEC. I mean, they have players all over the field. They've got a returning quarterback. The only place they might have downgraded is losing Quinshon Judkins at running back. Everywhere else appears to be veteran players that can really make plays. Not that this is do or die for Lane Kiffin, but is he ever going to be set up in a better situation than this, especially considering that Alabama is retooling after the Saban retirement?
No, it's really funny. I consider Lane Kiffin like that last cigarette you promise yourself, and then you go right back to it a week later. Like, you want to quit it, but you just can't let go of Lane. And right now, the way that his roster is constructed, it feels like he's all in. And the way that they talked about it this past year with everybody on staff, with Jackson Dart saying it's the last dance, with getting back Trey Harris, with getting back Peyton Prieskorn, and then you hear the way they talk about the defensive line. They were all in on building their trenches, and they did a great job getting number 1 former overall defensive prospect Walter Nolan, getting Princely and Manley Ellen. They don't play Alabama this year. They don't have Texas A&M on the schedule. They don't have Tennessee on the schedule, so there won't be any mustard bottles thrown Lane Kiffin's way. And also, they really have their 2 trickiest games at home against Oklahoma and Georgia. So, yeah, it does kind of feel like it is one of those years where it's not do or die, where they have to win the division or they have to go to Atlanta, because they can still make the playoffs because of its 12 teams. But you then wonder, well, how much more is it going to be? How much better can it get? Because you do feel like this is an 11-win roster. You do feel like this is a team that should compete for a national title. They have the 8th best odds in all of college football to compete for a championship this year. And that's saying something when you look back at the history of Ole Miss. Like, they used to be the laughingstock armpit of the SEC, and now they feel like even with the loss of Quinshon Judkins, they've made up for it in a running back by committee headlined by former Ole Miss running back that came back, Henry Parrish, where there really shouldn't be any fault, any concern, any question marks. They feel like they should be gung-ho at least making the playoff and then winning a playoff game or two for it to be a successful season in Oxford.
Cole, obviously there's been a massive shift with Saban's retirement nationally, but they're in the state of Alabama. It seems like it's been a little quiet. I know Hugh Freeze is still doing plenty of talking, but just in terms of kind of the expectations, they're sort of in the background here as of late. Do you expect an emergence from the Tigers in Hugh Freeze this season? If so, why? And if not, why not?
You know, I think they're going to be better than what we're kind of giving advertised right now. Most people have them as about an 8-win team. I think if they go about 9-3. And the main reason why is because you do look at the quarterback situation. You know, one of Freeze was recently on with WJOX talking about the $1 million quarterback issue. And to be fair, he didn't miss a beat. He was 100% correct to believe in Peyton Thorne, because you look at the quarterbacks that were on the market. How much do you feel like they are an upgrade over what you have currently in the locker room? And then also, how do you feel if you bring in a quarterback worth $1 million about the rest of your roster? Because it's one thing to be able to say, well, yeah, we get a quarterback that's better than Peyton Thorne, but he still has question marks with the wide receiver core. He still has a questionable defensive line. The offensive line couldn't add in a certain player because they had to give all the NIL funds to one name. And then you look at the roster in general. Peyton Thorne won the Peach Bowl with Michigan State with 2 1,000-yard receivers, with 2 quality running backs, with a good offensive line, and you kind of have that now in the Plains because if Keandre Lambert-Smith comes on over from Penn State, Cam Coleman is arguably the best wide receiver to walk through that building in over 2 decades. They have a good run game. They've upgraded the offensive line, and they're also allowing Freeze to call plays. To me, Auburn is the perfect coin flip team this year, where it could be a play or two in every matchup that is basically down to the wire, where if they hit and it lands on heads, they're going to walk away with a win. And if it lands on tails, they're going to easily drop a game. But they do feel more complete. They do feel like they've taken the necessary steps forward. And now that Freeze is the one calling the shots on offense, he's going to cater to what is Peyton Thorne's strengths. And also, if Peyton Thorne isn't the guy, he's got 3 players waiting in the wings that might be upgrades for the long term. So I like Auburn a lot. I don't think they are viewed at the same level as maybe Tennessee, maybe Missouri, maybe Ole Miss, but they will be better than I think advertised as of right now.
2 years ago, Tennessee made the jump, and heck, they were in the middle of that national, title at least discussion. Last year, Missouri made a jump. They were really, really good. Who makes that jump this year?
I'm going to go bold, I'm going to go brave, and I'm going to go ahead and say, because of somehow people think that he's not a good coach, which is absolutely insane, give me Kentucky. I really like this Kentucky roster and what they were able to bring in this past offseason via the portal. They upgraded their running back room by adding in Chip Trayanum after losing Ray Davis. They bring over Jamori Macklin. You guys know him from UNT. I know him from his time in the SEC so far. He is a vertical playmaker, led Conference USA last year for the Mean Green in receiving yards and yards after the catch. They also upgraded at quarterback with Brock Vandergrift. And the thing about a team like Kentucky, every 3 or 4 years, Mark Stoops is going to get a 10-win season. And I think he's playing with a little bit of hindrance and a bit of animosity because of basically he got Greg Schiano at College Station. The minute that it was announced that he was going to be hired and he was going to be hired by the Aggies, TexAg's message board just went completely berserk. So much so that Ross Stewart couldn't show his face that much longer on campus, and he had to go get the job at Ohio State to be the new athletic director. They did a really good job of upgrading both sides of the football. Their schedule is manageable. I could see them maybe being that team that goes and flirts with that 11 seed, 12 seed in the playoff. I really like Kentucky's roster. I think Bush Handman is a good replacement for Liam Cohen at offensive coordinator. The Wildcats feel like a wild bet, but they are a team that is built to compete alongside every other Tier 2 roster in the SEC.
How hard will it be for Mizzou to sneak up on teams now?
It shouldn't be. Yeah. Honestly, I feel like that I am I am like the number one Mizzou fan club lover this year of all the people that talk about the SEC. Because if you look at what they lost, it's a big deal, yeah, but they did a great job in the portal revamping their offensive line. They recently just got Marcus Bryant from SMU. That's a 3-year starter at left tackle, which now allows you to put Caden Green at his natural right tackle position. Marcus Carroll from Georgia State is the new running back that's going to replace Cody Schrader. Nobody is talking about him, and they should, because last season he averaged 6.2 yards per play and was a phenom in the Sun Belt Conference. I think he can be very similar to that type of player that Schrader was. You bring back both of your 1-2 combination wide receivers and Theo Wees and Luther Burden. They already have a good relationship with Brady Cook. The question that I do have is at that defensive end position, because you are going to lose some players naturally to the draft, Darius Robinson, Jalen Carlisle, and Rakestraw. But they were able to find a replacement safety. They were able to get a little bit better at linebacker for Tyron Hopper. I don't know who is going to be that edge rusher that can go break past offensive tackles and find their way into the backfield to pressure a quarterback and make a mistake. But I do know that this is a very good roster, and also their schedule is the most relaxed in college football. I mean, they should easily – I don't like writing this early in the season because we're not even at Memorial Day, but if I were to take a permanent marker right now and just throw Mizzou's name somewhere on the 12-team playoff board, I feel pretty relaxed because of as long as they don't have a major injury, they feel like a team that is built not only to build off of last season, but a team that certainly is going to be a playoff team.
Cole, we've had like a 2-year countdown now with Oklahoma and Texas of knowing that they were going to eventually be at this spot, and now it's time to turn the page. Semesters have ended. They're about to be officially, in a matter of weeks, officially a part of the SEC. I was just curious from your standpoint as somebody who covers the conference, how much influx of maybe conversation and just fan bases you've seen from those two. And obviously they're kind of, a narrative built right now that the Texas has the easier road and the better shot to make an impact early on than Oklahoma does, but just curious of where you fall on that as well.
So I have loved Twitter so much over the last couple of weeks. It's basically the Hatfields and the McCoys between OU and Mizzou Twitter, and that rivalry needs to come back. I am so excited to have that now in the SEC carried on over.
That one gets overlooked a little bit in the grand really conversation. Yeah,
it really is. But what I find so interesting with Oklahoma, they return basically everybody on defense. It's 80% defensive production rate, and they have 3 wide receivers that can fly down the middle of the field. They can boot, scoot, and boogie like Brooks and Dunn in the open space too with Gavin Stallbrick. So I think that Oklahoma actually is getting a little bit slept on compared to everybody else. But you are right when it comes down to it. Texas feels like a team that is going to show up to the SEC big boy table and tell one of those contenders that feels like they're about ready to break into the upper echelon, hey, I hope you had your fun. This was really nice that you got to experience what it's like to not be at the kiddie table. Go take your chair and go back with the other losers. I'm taking a firmly planted seat right at the middle ground because Steve Sarkisian has an anomaly and he has a baseline and an understanding not only what it means to have a culture, but how to revamp that culture. He was able to lose multiple coaches, players at the transfer portal, countless names in the NFL draft. And Texas still has top 5 odds, according to FanDuel this morning, to win the national championship. That's what great programs do. And they have a good quarterback that can win in Quinn Ewers. He just proved last year, marching into Nick Saban's house and winning by 10 points, that he is good enough. They have a great offensive line. They have an exceptional running back tandem that replaced Jonathan Brooks after he went down with a torn ACL. Defensively, they're going to be good. I really like the addition of Johnny Mason. Remember this name for the rest of the year and tell them that Cole Thompson told you first. Bill Norton is going to be a household figure in the SEC. I love that addition coming on over from Arizona in the second wave of the portal. Their schedule does have a few blips on the radar, but you look at that game, the Red River is going to have much more ambiance than just bragging rights. It's going to determine who really is now the face of the SEC, at least for the first few years. And then that game against Georgia, it's going to be in Austin. It's going to be a madhouse. It's going to be chaotic. But if they win, there's a legit case to say Texas, without missing a beat, shows up in the SEC and basically proves to everybody, not only do they belong, but they're going to be a legit threat to go toe-to-toe. We never got to see the Urban-Saban rivalry. Maybe we could get the Sarkisian-Smart rivalry, which is basically having two former Saban assistants go toe-to-toe against each other.
You know, one of the things, Cole, when that announcement came that shocked the college football landscape with Brett Zinnemann's story about Texas and OU, I think at the time everybody went, okay, Oklahoma's going to be okay. Texas, what are you doing? And that seems like that script has flipped just a little bit. Maybe because of the run UT was on last year, but also because of what they have coming back. Would you agree?
A little bit. I'd agree with you on that one, Smokey. You got to realize having a veteran quarterback to set the tone in the SEC is a blessing in disguise. And I think that maybe we would feel a little bit different about Oklahoma if they didn't lose Dylan Gabriel. Now, I want to preface this and say there was a reason Gabriel left. It wasn't NIL. It was because of who is waiting in the wings and what his upside is. Jackson Arnold can be that special quarterback that can lead the Sooners to multiple playoff appearances, maybe even a national title with the right pieces around him. But to have Quinn Ewers coming back with another year in Steve Sarkisian's offense, with the running back tandem that you have, with a very stable offensive line, it does not get much better than that to set a tone in a new era of football. And I love the additions that they were able to bring in. And the thing about Texas that really is important, when you look at Alabama and when you look at Georgia and they go into the transfer portal, they hit certain needs and they look for criteria players, and they can pick and choose who they want to join their roster in the offseason. Texas kind of did that too. When you think about names like Trey Moore coming on over, the AAC Defensive Player of the Year from UTSA, Andrew Makuba, the former Clemson defensive back who won ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year, what they were able to bring in, and Bill Norton and several other defensive linemen, Silas Bolden, who is a really good vertical threat receiver from Oregon State. They basically retooled their entire roster overnight to where, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma, I think, is going to be fine in the long run, but in the short term, Texas can really set a tone for themselves as not only a threat at the SEC level, but if they're at the national one that people are going to have to prepare for. And if they are not on their A game every single week, they're going to lose by double digits, whether it be at home in front of their own fan base or on the 40 acres.
Why did the SEC throw Florida in the wood chipper schedule-wise like they did?
So I personally believe Billy Napier got too big for his britches and told Greg Sankey to shove it one time. And so he said, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. Year 3, I'm going to make sure that you prove that you belong alongside us. Because I don't even think college football Satan himself could look at that schedule and go, yeah, I came up with that. It's baffling. And nobody knows what's going to happen to teams when you play 3 years in advance of preparing. Because Miami's on the schedule. I've said for the last 2 years, I believe Miami of 2024 is going to be the Texas of 2023. They were always waiting to get to year 3. And you look at the names that are brought in, they feel like a team that is supposed to be competing for not only an ACC title, but a college football playoff berth. UCF has done phenomenal work in the transfer portal, especially in the second wave, to go get Jacoby Jones out of Ohio, Penny Boone, who had offers from other major programs. And now you also get KJ Jefferson, who isn't basically Cam Newton, because I think if there's a certain respect factor we give to Cam for what he did in his 1 year at Auburn, but they do play a similar game style. And we also know that there's a Gus Malzahn special coming at some point where he's going to win a game he shouldn't. It's like wash, rinse, repeat. We know what's happening. And then they have those other trick-up matchups, especially in the second half. Texas with Georgia, they don't play Missouri, which I guess is kind of a blessing. You look at the radar of this team, they don't have a legit actual win that you can just pigeonhole and say, yep, guaranteed victory outside of Stanford in week 2. And I do like Graham Mertz. I love the addition of Chimere Dike from Wisconsin. I think he's going to be a good replacement for Ricky Pearsall. Eugene Wilson, I think, is going to have a phenomenal year. And they did a good job of rebuilding the offensive line, but they also just don't feel like a roster that's really well equipped to contend alongside anybody in the second half. And they're going to have to close out games. The thing with Billy Napier is I believe he is a really good coach. And I think that if Scott Strickland sees progress where the team is going down to the wire and they're holding their own against really everybody, and it only is, let's say, a field goal or one miscue or a muff punt, and that's what leads to losses and they go 6-6 or 5-7, maybe you could go ahead and bring him back. But at the same time, people aren't patient in college football anymore. They want instantaneous results. And it's year 3, and he's got to start proving that this is a team that is actually looking like a year 3 roster. When you go into the spring game and you're having miscues on special teams like you did during the regular season, that's not a team that is showing you that they're actually well equipped to hold their own and show progress.
Hey, Cole, great stuff. Glad we got a hold of you. Glad you're a part of the show. Hope to talk to you again on the show later on down the road. Thanks for your time today. We appreciate it.
Anytime, Smokey. Anytime, guys. Just holler at me. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Cole Thompson, SEC Unfiltered, and he had a bunch of information and lineups, incoming, outgoing, some interesting storylines when it comes to the SEC. We'll see what happens as they have both Oklahoma and Texas join an already locked in and loaded conference.
I mean, I think it's a fascinating year because of Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, that's just going to be – this is the only time we'll ever see something like that. I mean, the days of big schools like that moving around this year with all those and those in the Big Ten, it's highly unlikely that we see anything similar to this in the future, even with a ton more realignment or whatever you think it all looks like. I mean, this particular chapter is unique and I don't think going to be replicated. And when you have a league like that that's already pretty stocked, but then you add in those two, I mean, I think that's already interesting. But all the renewed rivalries, I mean, Oklahoma and Missouri doesn't get talked about. I mean, it does in some circles. In those circles it does. But in general, nationally, we go default immediately to Texas and Texas A&M or to, Texas and Arkansas even. But Oklahoma and Missouri is a damn big one that's getting renewed that I think is going to be great for both of those schools. Just the coaching changes that have occurred as well and the expanded playoff. Like, it's a fascinating year. The only downside to it all is there's just too many damn teams to talk about. Like, you have to have like almost an hour blocked out to even cover every base because you're talking about 16 teams all of a sudden as opposed to, I know it was 14 is not that much difference, but it is a little bit, especially when those two you're talking about, you could talk about each one of them for an hour by themselves, much less as a part of a pack that also includes several others like them. It's going to be just an interesting year in general for college football. I mean, it always is, but truly because of the realignment chapters that are now coming to fruition in the two biggest leagues in particular, but then elsewhere like the Big 12 with their 4 additions, the ACC with their 3 additions. We're not going to see anything like that where everybody's adding teams like this or teams of this caliber.
Yeah, these are some alphas.
Yeah, not to mention – this is also go down to the bottom of the list. It's SMU getting into a power league. Yeah. It's there's storylines galore just on the realignment front, and who knows what's still to come there, as we'll get to in a few minutes. But yeah, and then add in the coaching changes and all that. So it's going to be a fascinating year to see how all of that looks, and the expanded playoff makes it just another level of intriguing because now you can lose a couple games and still get a seed in the national championship playoffs. So that's crazy.
That's what I'm saying about, will college football ever get to a point where 8-5 or 9-4 in your regular season is going to be okay? Not that you accept it, but like an NFL
I don't think you can lose
record.
5 games and be a top 12 team.
Well, I don't think so either. My question was, do you think college football will ever get to that point? And you wonder if they ever were to separate yet again, you're going to have teams that have 5, 6, and 7 losses, not just because they're having a down year. Missouri and Oklahoma, 96 meetings, very one-sided. Oklahoma's won 67 of those, 5 ties. Like a lot of the rivalries Oklahoma's had over the years or Texas has had over the years, but it would be nice, especially when they're kind of joined at the hip, literally, to be able to have football back again. All right, when we come back, let's see, at 5 o'clock, we have Evan Miya. Garrett, let's do the records against top 10 opponents. Out of 131, chat room question. Oh, no, you've already put it up. Okay. Out of 131 teams in FBS football, chat room answers only. How many of the 131 programs have a 500 or better, you just saw part of a graphic, 500 or better record against teams in the last 10 years ranked in the top 10? How many?
So specific. So how many of 131's records against top 10 teams in the last 10 years? Did I hear that right?
How many of the 131 teams in college football, FBS, have a winning record against since 2014 against teams ranked inside the top 10?
I don't know, like 25?
Top 25. No, not that many. Brett said 1. Roger said 4. Come on, guys. Go Black 45-11. Very close. Brett, Mike 2 and 2. Go ahead. This is it. That's the list. There are 10 teams in FBS football who have a record of 500, or in this case, above 500 record against teams that were ranked. Ranked. Look how dominant Alabama. We knew that. Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, most of that in the last 3 to 4 years. Oklahoma and wet blankets, wet dream. Oklahoma State right there at number 6. Very competitive. LSU.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry. I almost let that go, and I couldn't.
Washington. Hey, look at TCU. You know, Patterson won some big games, and, of course, then they had the team 2 years ago, and then Oregon at number 10. There's a lot of alphas that are not on that list, and we'll get to them in just a second.
Well, a lot of the alphas on that, like Michigan's not on the list because – the years of 2014 to about 2018, 2019 were kind of bleh.
Well, they just couldn't, but they couldn't beat Ohio State.
But also the Big Ten quite often doesn't have a lot of ranked teams in it.
Florida State, Texas, who are hot now, this is part of their doldrums, so they're not on this list either. But there we are. Those are the only out of 131 schools that have a winning record against ranked opponents since 2014.
Well, and it's hard for, 70 of those schools to get many when they don't really play against ranked teams a lot because those teams don't get any respect in the top 25 poll. When it's just like, who do we put for the group of 5? Tulane's good. They're going to 22. That's what you get. SMU, they're good. 21.
Yep.
I mean, that's so you're eliminating half the field because they don't even get the opportunity to play very many of those games. But, I mean, yeah, if I had to guess, 7 of these teams are Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, I mean, I'm surprised and yet not. I wouldn't have guessed Oklahoma State, but I'm not surprised to see them on there. TCU, I'm not surprised to see them on there given the run that they've had. And, I mean, all those seem to jive and make sense. And you know what? Alabama, as good as they've had it, I don't care how good of a coach Kalen DeBoer is. I just have a hard time seeing, especially with the way the conferences have realigned, of another run like 54-13. But, man, if he can duplicate that, then by God, they got themselves the next Saban, potentially. I guess the maddening thing would be to be one of these teams towards the top that hasn't won really anything of any substance. I mean, that would be really maddening. I mean, you got national champion. Ohio State, I know, has been – I mean, they've got their titles, but they've been waiting for a little while now. And then to watch Michigan go and win it this year, that's why the pressure's creeping up on Ryan Day. Because at a certain point, you can win big games, but if it's not the right big games at the end, then it doesn't matter as much.
4 or 5 games around the country, rivalries that you can be really good, but if you lose too many of those in a row. So, Florida State, 12-24. Now, this is during a bubble where they after Jameis left, right?
I experienced all 24 of those bastards.
Notre Dame, 23-24. A&M, 17-27, which is somewhat respectable when you look at the entire list. Texas, 19-29. USC, 17-28. Nebraska, 2-30.
I can believe that. Yeah.
You want to just go home now?
I don't even know the 2.
Yeah.
I think they upset Ohio State when they had Barrett at quarterback one year when they somehow won the game in Lincoln. And Rex Burkhead was on that team. Rutgers, 0-34. Only team on the list that I saw.
But let's not pick on.
They're in the New York, New Jersey metro.
But let's not. Also, here's the thing. And if you're a Rutgers fan, I'm sorry for what I'm about to say. But when you say, why do you guys always pick on Rutgers? That's why.
Yeah. Vanderbilt, 3-35. There's others that are.
Don't pick on Vandy. Yeah. We've done it enough.
That's Illinois. A very respectable record for the Commodores, given what's at their disposal.
Illinois is 2-24. So I'm throwing out some of the names and some of the records of teams. Here's the rest of the Big 12. Just can glance at this. Arizona, again, 15-25 is pretty good. So if you're in that neighborhood where you're at 11-23, you're not really far down the list. Arizona State, Baylor, there's BYU, Cincinnati. They haven't played as many because, again, they were in a conference, American Conference, and a lot of those teams weren't given the opportunity to be ranked. Colorado, Houston, Not bad. They've only played 24 of those games. Iowa State, KU, Kansas State. I thought K-State would be better. Oh, no.
KU at 2-34 just shows you how in the dark that team was pre-Lance Leipold.
Yep. Texas Tech.
That was, 2 wins over Texas?
Yeah. No.
Well, one of them wasn't Texas would have been ranked, but one of them would have been, yeah.
Texas Tech is very down on that number, 5-34. I thought they, probably a couple of those were probably against Texas because they'll rally up against them.
UCF beat Oklahoma a couple years ago and beat Texas. They had the grand sweep of those two with close victory. Bijan fumbled in the start of overtime.
Yeah.
Or no. Dylan Gabriel fumbled at the start of overtime. And
on the flea flicker, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact sequence of it. But Bijan fumbled, which he never did, down the goal line. And then Gabriel fumbled. And so, that was a big
There's 2 of them.
Pair of wins. But, that's not surprising. I mean, they haven't been – I mean, look, when you talk about, why some leagues are talked about the way that they are, this is it right here. You got to beat the best teams. And you got to beat top 25 teams. And that's not what anybody's been able to do successfully, consistently for very long outside of, the teams like an Oklahoma or an Oklahoma State. The maddening thing with Oklahoma State is they haven't been able to turn it into anything more substantial than just being consistently very good. And that's what you're hoping now with the Sooners and the Longhorns potentially out of the way, that, you can on occasion hop over Kansas State or just beat K-State or beat whoever and win that Big 12 title and start to stack those and get into the playoff and maybe get some of those wins.
Yep.
But that's the part where they've been very good, very consistent, but they haven't been going and grabbing that elite level often enough to really, make it into more than what it has been.
What was it, 11 when they were on the cusp of playing was it 11 when they had a hell of a team and they lost a game at the end that knocked them out? Those are all the Big 12 teams, and I mentioned some of the others. Justin R., hey, you can't really say that about Cincinnati. The American Conference always had some ranked teams, but they had a horrible period at Cincinnati with Tommy Tuberville before Luke Fickell arrived. So there you are with that.
Yeah, more or less poking at the fact that, that you don't get a lot of teams in there all at once. It's very selective, and they're normally tucked towards the end. Now, Cincinnati, the particular playoff year, that was a different story when they were going undefeated. People eventually had to recognize them and replace them respectfully in the upper tier of the rankings. But and obviously they got their playoff spot. But for the most part, I mean, go look at the top 25 polls. You're going to get your AAC team, and they're going to be at 21 or 22. And then there maybe is a second team in there. But for the most part, they're tucked away at the end, and they're just sort of interchangeable. It's Tulane's that team now. Oh, well, now it was SMU now. And then, now it won't be SMU, it'll be somebody else. Or it was Houston with Tom Herman there for a little while. So, yeah, they had opportunities. Point being, they just didn't have as many opportunities for those types of wins as teams in those other conferences that have more teams ranked each week throughout the year.
Kim goes, I'm not surprised a bit by Tech's record. We were like Moses wandering around, lost in the desert after they fired Mike Leach.
Yeah.
They weren't very good. And I think there's this feeling because the fan base is so loud and they're so supportive and everything that, that's why sort of this feeling of Tech's a little bit of a sleeping giant because you feel like everything's there to be good, but they just really haven't been that.
Well, the excuse is the geography, which I don't think works.
Well, they don't use that as an excuse. That's everybody else saying that.
But that's everybody else saying that. Yeah. No matter what. No, they've got everything else going for them. They just didn't have the right guys. I mean, it was Tuberville and then Wells and Kingsbury, and they went through all that. By the way, you can read that comment on Tommy Tuberville in Cincinnati in my new book, Tommy Tuberville, Disappointing.
Yeah, there you go. All right, we need to break. Evan Miyakawa from evanmiya.com on the men's basketball transfer portal, winners and losers. And today we mentioned that we haven't shown the story. We'll do that to start the segment about a young man from Utah State who's going to play at Washington who got an NIL deal apparently of combination of deals at $2.2 million or so, or it could be as high as that according to Jeff Goodman. That and more. We'll also at some point get into North Carolina, rattling some cages yet again on the ACC, and this is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat Memorial Day is just around the corner. And they are already giving you some of the deals from Memorial Day weekend, even though we have a couple of more weeks to go. Here's one of what they have. Celebrate Memorial Day, the event in style with the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland 4XE. Perfect blend of luxury, capability, and efficiency with this plug-in hybrid lease now for $750 a month, 39 months, just $3,500 out of pocket during their seasonal promotion. Also, the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 4XE 2024. Elevate your adventures with exceptional fuel efficiency, iconic Jeep performance. Lease yours today for just under $750 a month, 39 months, only $3,500 out of pocket. They have a large chunk of pre-owned cars. They have, of course, the Ram truck. They have Jeep. You've heard it before of just some of those. Are just a couple of the opportunities available right now with the Memorial Day sales event going on at Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Ted Teague, General Manager, CEO, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
TexasBeefHouse.com marketing director had an incredible online auction, live auction, of course, in the month of April. There'll be another one just around the corner. But May, people start to get out on the grills. The weather's cleared up. You got a special throughout and some ideas for the month of May.
So May, we consider May, June, and July as grilling month. We've got our jalapeno and cheese patties, our regular Wagyu hamburger patties, our garlic links. Two things that people aren't usually familiar with are our flap steak and flank steak. Those are a large piece of meat that you can cut up and eat with a fajita, or a lot of people will just cut it up and eat like a normal steak. This is our favorite time of the year because it's the perfect weather to get outside and get that grill going.
In the end, did you guys have another great auction? Did it all go well?
We had another fun auction. We had Wagyu brisket at this auction. It was phenomenal. We had so many customers that were so excited. They've given us their feedback on Facebook. We've got a lot of exciting things coming with a new platform that we've got going called Bid on Beef that we'll be releasing in the next couple of months. We're really excited about what the future holds for us.
TexasBeefHouse.com. No hormones, no antibiotics, no steroids, premium grade East Texas beef from their pasture to your plate. They'll deliver it to you locally. They bring it directly to your door. Farm-raised Wagyu beef. May grilling month, May, June, and July, and there's not a better place to find what you want to put on the grill, whether it's hamburgers, flank, or flap steak. Samantha, there's always that code to get a discount.
Yes, absolutely. Use the code SICK'EM10, SICK'EM10, and get 10% off your order of $100 or more.
TexasBeefHouse.com.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sick'em 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Evan Miyakawa, EvanMiya.com he's risen through the national ranks because of a lot of his analytics that he has when it comes to men's basketball, also including the portal. Baylor, of course, picking up lately Norshad Omier, plus also the young man from California, and the story today about Washington picking up the great, right, Paul, for $2 million NIL. And we got asked Evan to come on and kind of give us an update of where everybody might be. Paul?
Evan, let's first talk about a guy who we know where he's going, and that's great. Osobor follows his coach, Danny Sprinkle, from Utah State to Washington. He's getting $2 million in NIL deals, which I find refreshing to know. At least there's some sunlight on that and it's clarity. But what kind of impact do you see for Washington, especially given the fact that you're paying $2 million? You would expect for just one player at $2 million, you would hope for a deep run into the postseason for the Huskies.
Yeah, I mean, Great Osobor is a fantastic player who's Mountain West Player of the Year, averaged 17 points, 9 boards per game there. If you're paying him $2 million, you're basically paying for him to be an All-American this season. That's the level that's expected. I mean, the interesting part about this to me is that players who wait to commit later in the portal cycle end up demanding more money just because teams are more desperate for good players. So I think if Great had gone in the portal and committed a month ago, he probably wouldn't be above $1 million. But because he waited so long, and he was recruited by some high-profile programs like Kentucky, for example, that just makes a huge difference for him. So I think he's going to be good. My analytical model is lower on him than what you'll see elsewhere. I think other people kind of have him as a consensus top 10 transfer. For me, he's actually around 50th best in the portal. So I think that evaluation of $2 million is much higher than what his value actually will be. But he was a great player for Utah State. He took them to the tournament. So, I really hope he does well there. But $2 million for him is whether you like him or not, it's pretty outstanding.
Yeah, and you never really know with a lot of these figures, too. Sometimes we hear things, and it's not always what it appears to be, but it is always interesting nonetheless to hear some of the money figures that are thrown out there, Evan. I know you've got your rankings and how you've viewed the transfer portal activity and whatnot. Obviously, Baylor comes in pretty high, not at the very top, but pretty high with what they've been able to do this offseason. Where would you kind of situate them in terms of the impact you feel has been made nationally and in the Big 12? And what do you like about what Scott Drew and company have done thus far?
The thing I like about Scott Drew and Baylor the last several years for transfers is they don't go for volume. They go for guys that are really going to fit in and be impact players for them. So I really like what they've done so far. You mentioned my transfer class rankings on my website at evanmiya.com. I rank every team in terms of both their incoming transfer class, that's looking at all the guys they brought in through the portal, but also in terms of overall transfer activity, which looks at both the guys you have coming in and the guys who are leaving. And Baylor ranks 9th or in the top 10 in both of those categories this offseason. And this is kind of what we've come to expect with Baylor. Every offseason, if they have holes, they typically plug it with really good guys. So I particularly really like Jeremy Roach from Duke and Nochad Ormier from Miami coming in. Those are two guys who I have ranked as top 30 transfers. I have Nochad Ormier in the top 10 transfers in the portal. And given that there's, around 2,000 guys in the portal this year, that's very good. So I really like how both of those guys come in. They have as much experience as you possibly can get in the transfer portal. Both of them have played in a Final Four in the past. So when you add those guys to Baylor's returners along with some of their high-profile freshmen, I mean, this is a team that has everything that you would want. It has returning production. It has veterans to the portal. It has 5-star talent coming out of high school. I really like the balance there for the squad.
Evan, with what you said Scott Drew does in the portal and what they've added, what they left, did they fill all the needs in your opinion?
That's a good question. I think so. I mean, when you look at some of the way too early top 25 rankings that are out there, I consistently see Baylor in the top 10. I haven't crunched my own with all the numbers just because it's so hard right now to figure out who's staying, who's leaving. There's a lot of assumptions made with those rankings. But in general, I think Baylor has a strong squad again next year. So I do think they've plugged all the holes. Certainly, every team has more needs that they could fill. But at this point in time, I think they have all the pieces that they're going to need to potentially be a Final Four threat this season.
Which team with a new coach has helped themselves the most?
I think that would probably have to be either Louisville or Michigan. So Louisville, with Pat Kelsey coming from Charleston, obviously Louisville was not any good last year. I have Louisville right now ranked in the top 3 in terms of overall transfer activity. So they've been able to add a lot of good pieces to the portal. And then Dusty May at Michigan, coming from Florida Atlantic. He's brought over some of his guys from FAU, but also has gotten some other big names to the portal. Danny Wolf from Yale, for example, is going to be a big-time scorer for them. So I think those are the 2 programs I would highlight as, with new coaches, making the biggest splash early. Kentucky is in the conversation as well. Obviously, Kentucky has an interesting situation in which Mark Pope, coming from BYU, had exactly 0 pieces returning from Kentucky, with all of their players deciding to transfer out. So he's had to build from scratch there, and I think he's done a really good job as well.
Among the Big 12, with all the incoming teams, we know what Arizona brings to the table. We know of the returning schools with Houston, Iowa State, KU, Baylor, all locked inside the top 10. It appears that way. Who would you say had the best of the year or offseason among those teams?
In terms of Big 12 schools in the transfer portal?
Yeah. How would you? Yeah. Like I mentioned them. Some just had a lot of people back. Houston had a lot of people back. But when you talk about everything plus the portal, how would you rank them?
I think Baylor has to be in the conversation. I think they've really solidified themselves. I have them as having the best incoming transfer class. Kansas definitely has to be in the conversation as well. Obviously, this was a bit of a letdown season for them, first round exit in the NCAA tournament. And I have them as the best team in the Big 12 in terms of overall transfer activity ranking. And that's with me being fairly pessimistic on some of the guys that they brought in relative to some of the other rankings that you'll see out there. But Kansas always does a good job of reloading. I really like the pieces that they've gotten. Rylan Griffin is I think they're going to be their best transfer. He's was a really productive wing for Alabama in the Final Four. So I think he's going to do well. Zeke Mayo is another one who's coming in for Bill Self. So Kansas really, it seems to me like they never leave themselves lacking in the offseason, kind of regardless of what holes they need to fill. I think Houston is really impressive too. I mean, Houston isn't bringing in the biggest name transfers, but so much of what Houston does is they retain important pieces. They bring back guys who are big cultural fits for them. So I think Houston's probably going to be a top 5 squad this year when we come around to the preseason again.
Of the guys left in the transfer portal, who are you surprised has not committed just yet?
Honestly, I cannot say anything about why I'm surprised or not a guy can be in the portal, just because at this day and age, it has everything to do with NIL and with agents and what they're being promised. So I don't really think you can say surprised or not surprised, because, the longer that guys seem to stay in the portal, the more that they demand. So, for some of the guys who are waiting to commit, they might just be playing the long game there. And with other guys too, it's hard to say if they're actively looking to be recruited through the portal. Coleman Hawkins, for example, he's my top available transfer on the board right now from Illinois, but he, based on what he said, would like to get drafted. So part of why he's still available is because he's going through the pre-draft process. And if he decides to come back, he could return to Illinois. He could go somewhere else, but we don't even know if those discussions are happening yet. So it's really hard to say.
Yeah, I saw where he responded to the note about Osabor getting the money at Washington, where he kind of did really like that kind of thing. So he's number 1 now on the list with Osabor off the list, or was he number 1 or ahead of him anyway?
He was ahead of him anyway. And actually the funny thing about Coleman Hawkins is when he first entered the portal, he immediately slotted in into my rankings as the second best transfer in this class, with Kadari Richmond from Seton Hall, who's gone to St. John's, being number 1. So I made a post on Twitter about it, said Coleman Hawkins would be the number 2 transfer. And he quote tweeted my tweet and said, "Number 2, really?" with a laughing emoji. He quickly deleted it, but clearly he thinks he's the best player in the portal and is probably looking for that kind of money as well.
Evan, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Evan Miya, or Miya, M-I-Y-A, on Twitter and also online. And it is just loaded with all sorts of numbers, stats, data, and analytics. Evan Miyakawa, we knew him when he was just a wee lad. Like a wee lad, and he's become now national. A lot of writers now refer to him and his information too.
If you're a basketball junkie, his website is amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
A lot of fun. And
it really helps inform, looking at things especially when you get to the postseason, you see Look, when I did my bracket, which did not do well, and maybe it's because I don't understand math like Evan does it at, he's a doctor, of math, PhD. So he has all that knowledge. I didn't do well, using his site to inform my bracket.
You
this
didn't
year.
do 2 + 2 is 5?
No, I mean, picking Auburn in the Final Four really is something.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll have to.
You don't know.
I might go to like an ashram and meditate with monks to get over that. That was really bad. Lost on the first damn day.
Yeah, I can't speak to any math knowledge. I have none.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, Evan's.
Yeah. I'm
What do
the
you mean,
one.
what? That's the story of my whole life. I don't do math.
I do math. You guys do English, grammar, and history. All right. Garrett, you have good math?
I'm good.
All right. All right. So there's a story that's been going on. We all know about the rumblings constantly within the ACC, whether it's Florida State or it's Clemson or it's North Carolina. By the way, they're having their spring meetings in Amelia Island. This is a tweet. I sent you a different one. But there was a tweet from a year ago where Jim Phillips ended the spring meetings. We're all in this thing together. We believe in the ACC, which is what the Big 12 said right before A&M and Missouri left for the SEC.
The vote of confidence is a terrible thing.
Let's go back to Brett McMurphy, though, on this story. So this is what a trustee at North Carolina has said. In other words, Carolina's ability to maintain excellence at a high level is going to require really prudent budgets and revenue models and potential cost cutting. Now, at the same time, there is the story about, well, we need to go into another conference like we've heard because that's the only way we're going to survive. So what about today's news with North Carolina was really any different than any other news that we've seen about North Carolina, Clemson, and Florida State?
Well, it's North Carolina who's been kind of riding the line. They were the third one that you'd expect, but they've been riding the line a little bit and not saying anything. But to have a trustee come out, it's very much following the FSU path of, all right, wait until there's something to say and then say it.
And it's not just one trustee. It's multiple trustees.
It's multiple trustees, and like they're having – they're going to wait till the meetings come out. I think North Carolina is actually in favor of reforming the ACC would be their ideal model because the ACC is their conference. I mean, that is their conference. They've run it forever. They're the ones who are, kind of the big, even though they're not the best football, but like they're the school that is the model of the ACC. And the reason that the conference office is in North Carolina is due in large part to UNC. So they would like to reform it. The problem is that there's 8 schools in the ACC that don't make as much money as the other schools do, and they would never in a million years vote for that. So now we're, even though it might be in their best interest long term, or at least in the short term to do that and keep the ACC together, long term, those 8 schools know that like everybody else who's voted to, have unequal revenue sharing has lived to regret it.
Well, I mean, the thing that's different today is the fact that the UNC Board of Trustees has approved an audit of the school's athletic department, and that is the big news, guys. Mm-hmm. That is what's different than just barking and articles coming out. And that comes from Brian McMurphy over at WRAL, who's been all over. We've had him on the show a few times. I know there's a couple of profile pieces that were out. Pat Forty had one, and there was like a quote from the Athletic had one as well. I'm trying to remember which one was which, but there was a quote from Mike Krzyzewski, I believe it was in the 41. It was, really talking up Phillips, but he was also saying that, it's a crazy time right now, and he was speaking about how leadership is needed and the values that Phillips has is needed, but that it's a really tough time and that there's a lot of people with hidden agendas and that fans, this is Coach K talking, would be amazed by all of what's really happening in the conference office and that it finally came to fruition with Florida State, but that they're not the only ones looking at different things. So that was from Mike Krzyzewski in the Pat Forty article, and then I believe the Athletic had some as well. But yeah, I mean, Brian Murphy over at WRAL reported that the Board of Trustees, a couple of them who are quoted today and being very outspoken about how they feel about North Carolina's current positioning, and I think maybe he had the quote up there from one of them. They're wanting to get down to the bottom of it. They're not happy, I think, with Bubba Cunningham's approach. I think there's some obvious difference of opinions and different voices that now want to be heard and want to try to rattle the cage and get this thing moving on down the tracks because they feel like Florida State's felt and they feel like how Clemson to some level has felt. And I think the audit thing is the big thing to me, but having more people being more outspoken and on the record, and then with the turbulence that you may have with the way that things are being ran right now, I think that all adds up to just, some more feeling of like, something's about to burst in North Carolina. And at least that's how I read it. Not burst as in like they're announcing their withdrawal. Like nothing can still happen until these court cases get sorted out, as far as Florida State and Clemson in particular go. And therefore that goes to the rest of everyone else, in particular North Carolina. But I do think that there is an interesting little battle now being waged within their own house, right, in Chapel Hill. And so you've got people that feel that pressing need, much like Florida State has felt, to like, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. We got to get out of here now. We got to get out at whatever cost. How do we get out of here? And, I think that's what we're starting to see is the pressure ratchet up, I would say. So, we'll see how the full audit of the athletics department goes. But there's a lot of, I guess, the information and the details in that Brian Murphy article. But, yeah, they're feeling the pressure, and I think you're starting to see that kind of seep out a little bit more than it has previously with North Carolina. And I saw, Billy Liucci, who's obviously a big A&M guy, he made the comment. It's just a passing comment, and it's, like 1,000 others out there, but he made the comment that, North Carolina was the school that the SEC was eyeing back in the round of realignment with, who was it that he referred to? I'm trying to get – there's been so many rounds of realignment, I want to make sure I get the right one that he was talking about.
The last one they had before Texas and Oklahoma was A&M and Missouri, am I right?
Yeah, I think it might have been, and I'll find it here in just a second, I want to make sure I get exactly what he said. The crown jewel and who the SEC originally wanted along with A&M during the 2010-11 expansion. So that's just something that he mentioned. And he would know if it was in regards to A&M. Obviously, that ended up being Missouri instead. But I think we all understand the value that North Carolina has. We don't know how much the basketball value carries as far as weight versus football. But I don't want to hear, by the way, about North Carolina academics just because of what happened a few years ago. I see that thrown out a lot, and I'm like, did we just completely forget one of the biggest scandals in college sports in the last couple decades with North Carolina's academics? But regardless, they are obviously a very well-respected institution with a lot going for it, including some of their academics. And so, it just feels like the spotlight's just sort of shifting around, and now today in Chapel Hill, it's getting a little louder than it has been, and I think that's notable. So, more to pile onto the ACC's stack of logs that's currently on fire and starting to blaze and very well could turn into an inferno at any point in time the farther we get down the tracks.
No, Jim Phillips is treading he's treading water right now. And look, there's, to his credit, there's really nothing he can do. And there's nothing he could have done because even though he can go and say all these things and we're tight and we're together and blah, 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 at the end of it, he just can't unilaterally go, hey, ESPN, more, because they can't do it. And he also wasn't, and I've been very critical of him in the way he's handled a lot of things, but he also wasn't the guy who made this really long television contract and sold it to the member schools of this will protect us. And I still would like to be a fly on the wall if anybody said, hey, what if this happens again? Mm-hmm. And then they'd be like, this will prevent it from happening again. Well, what if other people do it? Well, we're not worried about them. Okay, well, and the other thing the ACC did was years ago they kind of doubled down on they were going to be the basketball league, and they didn't invest as much in football, and that was when they probably could have. And you have two schools that win most of the championships, and you see what's happened now.
Yeah, and you mentioned the spring meetings. They have those ongoing right now, so there's more of that, the fact that they're all meeting together, and so you've got that whole in-house process going on while you have stories like this going on alongside that. And so, I just think it's just more on the plate of what is a very interesting time for this conference, and they're very much in the they're on the main stage of people's attention because there's a way the SEC is affected by this. There's a way the ACC is affected. Well, obviously, there's a way the Big Ten's affected by this. There's a way the Big 12's affected by this. To a lesser extent, I think they're more playing the wait and see game. Everybody is, but them especially. But yeah, this is a major conference of which there are only 4 now. And I know people will argue too, but as far as autonomy goes,
right.
There's only 4, and this is now one of those 4 that is on shaky ground with a lot of consternation and a lot of worry and a lot of doubt and a lot of people trying to get the hell out of there. So you heard more of that just become in public, and now you got ACC meetings alongside that, and it's a very interesting time. And now you're going to start looking into North Carolina because some of their trustees said, they just put it out there. If we can't compete at the same level, or they want to compete at the level of the best. And right now they can't do that, they feel, in the ACC. So they're going to, look into everything, like I'm sure every other school is doing, and get down to the bottom of what their problems are. But I think most of the answer is going to come back for those in Tar Heel Blue of, well, the answer is to go to a different conference. So how can we possibly do that?
Andrew Carter of the News and Observer in Charlotte does a really good job of covering this. Watch what he says here, or look at what he says here. ACC spring meetings commencing soonish. Well, they have. At the Ritz, no better locale for some well-moneyed people to gather amid an existential crisis about not having enough money.
Yeah.
And there's the price down at the bottom, $398 a night at the Ritz-Carlton at Amelia Island.
When I was a youth, my father, he had meetings, and we stayed at that hotel a couple times. It is awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome in 1994. I bet you it's even better now.
Ritz-Carltons are not awesome.
No, but it was great. It was wonderful. I'll just tell you, Smokey, you're a big shrimp fan. The seafood buffet they had every night, just unreal.
Yeah.
Very nice. I was having I had this random thought on this is totally random, and I'm going to circle somehow back to North Carolina, even though they're not connected at all. But I was thinking of my last meal. I think I watched a crime documentary or something like that. I think fried shrimp and some good French fries would be a part of. It wouldn't be the only thing because you have 10 different things. It's whatever you want. It's like a buffet. But I think fried shrimp, a good fried shrimp basket, it's hard to beat from my standpoint.
I don't do a lot of fried shrimp anymore, but when I do,
I love fried shrimp.
But when I do, it's really good. Yeah,
I'll just
with
tell
some
you,
nice cocktail sauce.
At the Ritz-Carlton to me, I am the dinner buffet, and this might be at all Ritz-Carltons. I've been to a couple, but the
humble brag.
Yeah, the seafood. It was because of Pete. It was because of my dad. He got his company was paying. Believe me, he would never pay $400 a night for a hotel. No, we stayed in a lot of Holiday Inn Expresses, but we go in and it was just like Forrest Gump or Bubba Gump. Not Bubba Blue. Benjamin Buford Blue from Forrest Gump made the menu where it's like, here's your shrimp cocktail, here's your fried shrimp, here's your this, all the way down the thing. And then they had, crab legs and everything else for lobster. And I remember asking, my dad's like, yeah, we'll have that. And I was like, I can have all right, right there.
Yeah.
As a 15-year-old football player, I was like, all right.
Yeah,
you guys are about to see something special.
It's hard to be, but yeah, when I think of Four Seasons on a where'd you say that was?
It was in Amelia Island.
Yeah, Amelia Island on the coast. That's it. Just for some reason that popped into my head. But going back to North Carolina, Brandon Marcello had this one note from 247 of that he had spoke with Bubba Cunningham at the spring meetings, and Bubba Cunningham had no comment on the report from Brian Murphy. Said he hadn't read it, but that he will be at the Board of Trustees meeting on Thursday. So that's something to watch for here in a couple days.
He probably shouldn't. No.
Yeah.
But, and Bubba Cunningham's been one of the more respected athletic directors.
He's under fire, though, right now.
But he's under fire because, people want to see – the problem is they want to see immediate action. I respect guys who are measured about it publicly, but I think that people want to see more firebrand talk when it comes to us. This league sucks. We're getting out and all that. And I don't know if that benefits North Carolina right at this moment, but we'll see where it goes. But each school has to do their own thing. Florida State was very loud about it. Clemson was very quiet about it until they filed the lawsuit. And even then, they're kind of letting the lawsuit do the talking.
They're letting Florida State carry the weight, basically.
Yeah. And then if North Carolina, the thing the ACC does not need to see is a school from North Carolina jump into the lawsuit game. And if it's North Carolina, that would be very, very bad for them.
Yes, well, I mean, if I'm Bubba Cunningham, I feel like I'm under attack for certain. I think that much is obvious, especially when they're talking about, getting into auditing your athletic department fully. That's not a vote of confidence, guys. So that's why, circling back to our original part of this conversation, that's why it's notable, that news in particular today. And then you have the ACC meetings going alongside that. So nothing breaking, nothing this on the verge of collapse, like that kind of stuff that you see. Don't want to overplay it and make it something that it's not. But obviously all of the stuff that goes on out there can have ramifications eventually. And while I don't expect any shoe to drop, it's just another interesting chapter in this little saga that's ongoing right now that'll eventually lead somewhere. And what that looks like for the ACC. I mean, that's the thing everybody's trying to wonder right now.
Charlie Baker was there earlier. Nicole Arbach with this. He said he's not putting a deadline. Remember the story? I don't know if we actually ever got to that more of the updates on that House versus NCAA lawsuit, various reporters saying that they hope to have some decision by the end of the month.
Yeah,
we had been told it might be in the next couple of months. And this thing changes all the time. He just said he's not putting a deadline on accepting or rejecting a settlement of that lawsuit. But the most important part of it, it creates some clarity on the whole bunch of issues that have been sort of roiling everybody for quite some time. What were you going to say?
Yeah, but then it's like when we talked to Darren Heitner last week, and when you read some of the comments from some of the legal folks on this, it's like it's going to be a Band-Aid.
Well,
it's just a Band-Aid, and it's not even like a long-term Band-Aid.
Part of today's news was that there might be an annual I don't want to use the word look-in because that's what Yormark used when it comes to the college football playoff. There might be an annual a policy that says every year student athletes who are not going to be a part of any kind of revenue sharing or the antitrust whatever, they can meet to have their argument listened to. It's convoluted. Here we go. I got it right here. Let me read it to you, okay? The co-lead counsel representing athletes in the House case told ESPN he and his team have proposed a solution that would extend the class action settlement on an annual basis. In his scenario, athletes would receive a notice every year providing them with the opportunity to object to the terms of a revenue-sharing agreement. He said those athletes would then have the chance to attend a hearing, persuade the judge that the revenue share arrangement was unfair in order to push for a change. Each year, we would have a hearing where any new athlete who wasn't previously bound by the settlement can come and object. Now, that would be, in his opinion, a large burden for the athlete to argue the case.
Yeah, so, again, it just seems like it's a very flimsy building foundation. It's one that can, sort of kind of temporarily answer things, but it is not a solution. It is not a long-term solution especially, and it just feels like it's going to create more legal issues, ultimately. But, I mean, if it helps stem off some of the nuttiness of this whole, enterprise, then that's great, but it definitely is not like something that's like the big grand answer that a lot of people are hoping for.
Yeah. I'm going to read another part of the article, but you go ahead first.
The way that's out, will they be able to argue this with a legal representative?
Yeah, I'm sure they could have it.
Well, because look, the NCAA,
or an agent or whoever.
Title IX hearings were a lot of schools where no, this is going to be a hearing in front of a council. You can't have attorney argue for you. You have to argue on your own and all these things. That's not good if that's it. But if they have attorneys present, then
this is part of the article again. Here's the breakdown of the landscape. According to multiple industry sources, the Big Ten is generally on board with the settling. The SEC has some distractors of settling, but is trending to the majority. The Big 12 is expected to follow along. Of course they are. There's some dissension in the ACC, that's shocking, which is amplified by FSU and Clemson suing the league, but sources say it's unlikely the ACC overall would end up voting against what would be laid down and hopefully agreed upon. I just think that this is just so much legalese. I get tired of it, but it's still news that we need to discuss on this show.
No, it's news. It's also like we're not going to pretend that we understand every part of that. That's why we have certain guests on. It also does get very tiresome after a while, just the constant like legal language and trying to parse through certain things. I think the North Carolina stuff today is a lot clearer. It's basically them demanding. This is one particular quote from one of the UNC trustees on North Carolina needing to go find someplace else. I am advocating for that. That's what we need to do. We need to do everything we can to get there to the ACC or to the SEC or the Big Ten. Or the alternative is the ACC is going to have to reconstruct itself. I think all options are on the table, and they've already kind of tried to do that.
Yeah, didn't they do that with?
That seems like it's failed already. So why would it work better this next time?
That's what I brought up earlier.
Aren't you going to get what you earn on top of whatever the normal is?
No, you're going to get it's postseason. They're talking about straight up and down like it used to be in the Big 12, where Florida State, North Carolina, Clemson, and whoever else fits into that little bubble would get
more of the
to
annual
start.
NCAA revenue.
To start.
Okay.
Like before you get to the postseason or whatever, they get the Texas, Oklahoma, A&M deal. Was there another 4 school in there that got that? Nebraska. So the 4 schools that all aren't there anymore, but the 4 schools in the Big 12, for a long time, Texas and Oklahoma got the most, and then A&M and Nebraska were like a tier right below them and still getting more money than everybody else because they were the bigger, badder schools or whatever.
How'd that end up?
It ended up with a conference.
Did that make everybody happy?
No, it didn't.
The 4 schools that got more are the ones who left.
Yeah, so even still, there's nothing you can really ever do to make them happy. And there's really 8 schools in the ACC now that would prevent this from happening because they don't really have any other alternative. But like if they voted for it, it would probably be better for them in the short term that the ACC would continue to exist, except for the fact that if they vote for it and reform it, and that means maybe a new TV deal and ESPN does their look in and renegotiates and blah, 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 or whatever happens.
If are carrying a lot of weight in that scenario.
Exactly. Like there's no guarantees that the ACC exists in 5 years, even if they did reform.
And I will say all that to say, like, I wanted to get back to that because I think that's more interesting than what you were mentioning, but I know you had to mention it because it is of interest, but I just feel like that's such a complex legal thing that they're still trying to sort through that we clearly know what the North Carolina news is today, and it's not anything earth-shattering because we've kind of known the sentiments coming out of there anyways, but the attack on Bubba Cunningham, so to speak, a full athletics audit, that is the opposite of a vote of confidence, so that is notable, especially when cages have been rattling. So we're not going to sit here at all and say, get ready, it's happening. Not at all, but, I mean, it's just another step forward down the road of what you ultimately think is going to be some explosion of some sort when it comes to the ACC or just the whole configuration of college sports in general.
It's hard for a school to take on a conference or be a part of something if they themselves have their own infighting, which appears that could be the case. Dan Miter asked me about, I thought the P4s were pushing for 10 years down the road with no litigation or lawsuits. There is nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. No settlement can prevent a lawsuit or any kind of legal issues down the road.
Yeah, because there's antitrust, issues that arise, and there's things like that. So yeah, as good as it sounded when it was initially presented, and that's why you when we get a lot of these articles, instead of just trying to react immediately to them and to the headline, like you really do have to dig a bit deeper. And so what seemed like it was a possible, like this is the end all be all solution. It's like you get to the end of the first paragraph from Ross Dellinger and you're like, oh, this is temporary.
Yeah.
Like it's at best, it's temporary. It wouldn't stave off everything. It wouldn't end all lawsuits. It would basically take care of the big issue that they're trying to take care of, or one of the big, is the back pay.
$2.7 billion.
That's the thing is the back pay that they're trying to get that finished and official and done with and squared away, because that is a major issue facing especially all the power schools. So
and who's going to pay it?
And all that.
In
so
10 years
everybody's trying to figure that part of it out, but that alone doesn't solve anything moving forward. That solves the back pay for the athletes in this what is the term, the amount of time that you have legally.
Statute of limitations.
Yeah, it's like within the statute of limitations, the athletes that can command back pay, that's what you're trying to settle with and take care of. So you get rid of the backstory, and you can just focus fully on the future. And so, you wish you could knock out two birds with one stone, but that's impossible. So the future's still very murky as far as all that goes. But, yeah, if you can agree to a settlement for the past athletes, then that would at least be one thing off of your docket and a major investment that everybody's going to have to make that you at least know of and can take care of.
You get to settle, and then you also figure out how much it's going to be, get that done, and then move forward with the revenue sharing of how much of the Power 4 schools are going to pay, salary cap, and more. Now, one question, I'm not going to read all this because it's long, but what happens to collectives and NIL payments? I don't think they're going to be affected at all. I think this will be on top of whatever that continues to be with the NIL and collective.
This might give them a little bit more structure in how they're supposed to be, and it'll probably allow the collectives to not have to raise as much money for guys that are not going to pay off for you. It'll maybe allow them to be kind of more of what they're intended to be, although I think that's kind of a pipe dream. They're still going to be pay for play, but if you have collective bargaining inside college athletics and you've got players getting a salary, I think the collectives become less of a confusing issue just because now they can be, kind of more what they were intended to be, but they're still going to be pay for play.
School officials hope a settlement will create a way to strengthen the NCAA's ability to enforce its rules. That might never happen again, including its rule that requires NIL payments to be for a player's market value as opposed to the current system pay-for-play arrangements.
I hope they invent pizza that gives you a six-pack.
Yeah,
but I'm not
they start talking about all this. We hope. We hope.
Yep.
We hope.
All right.
We hope.
Hey,
we hope.
Tomorrow, Mac Rhodes is with us in studio, Baylor's Director of Athletics, on them now having that in-house type department, and his thoughts about this and, of course, a lot more. That is tomorrow. Sonny Dykes, TCU football coach, is also a part of our group of guests tomorrow. When we come back, Paul Catalina and the top five.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for your automotive needs here in the Central Texas area. Over the years, over the past 20-plus years, thousands and thousands of Central Texans and people beyond Central Texas have counted on Richard Carr to get the best deal on a new or pre-owned vehicle and also on just getting their car or car, truck, or SUV serviced. So whether it's an oil change, getting your tires fixed up, getting some body work like I had done a couple years back, they can square you away whatever you're looking to do, a one-stop shop. And right now, if you are looking for some space as in your vehicle because you've got some family, you're traveling cross-country, maybe some college buddies, y'all are going somewhere on a road trip, you want to be comfortable, you want to feel safe, you want to have that peace of mind that comes with driving a great vehicle, well, look at the Buick Enclave. It's got space for your entire crew, and it offers a quiet drive loaded with space-age technology. Buick vehicles offer uncommon luxury at common prices, and you can come experience a Buick test drive today. Right now, save thousands on the new Buick Envisions. Save $6,000 exactly on the Buick Enclaves, and military and first responders can also save an additional $500 as well. So you can talk to the good folks over at Richard Carr for more details on the Buick lineup. But the Enclave right now, thousands in savings along with the Envision that can be yours. They also have a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks as well. 100% credit approval is always the goal over at Richard Carr. They say yes when others say no. So whatever you're looking to do, buy new, buy used, they have plenty of options on their lot for you to check out today. In business for 25 years in Central Texas. Again, they've built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robin Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at Marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marcos Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marcos Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America, 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marcos Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, presented by Texas Beef House. Today, top 5 transfer QBs with something to prove. Number 5, Tyler Van Dyke at Wisconsin. This is a guy who started out his career at Miami. Fantastic. Everybody thought, holy cow, this guy can throw. This guy can do a lot of things. He's winning with the Hurricanes, something that hadn't happened in a long time. That story turned sour really quickly. The last couple of years of Miami football has not provided as much promise as maybe in his first year starting, and definitely not as much as promise as it showed. Plus, he's battled through a ton of injuries to now come out the other side as the presumed starter at Wisconsin. This is someone who had NFL written all over him early on. Right now, he's going to be lucky to be drafted because of the situation that he put himself in or that Miami put him in. Let's see if Luke Fickell can get anything out of Tyler Van Dyke, if he can restart him. Sometimes it's not the guy's fault completely. Sometimes things happen that break quarterbacks down or break players down, and they need a reboot. This reboot could be very interesting to watch at Wisconsin in year 2 of Luke Fickell, who's known to get the most out of guys when he gets them on the field. Number 4, KJ Jefferson, UCF. He was supposed to transform Arkansas, right? He was supposed to be the guy that brought them to the next level. And he showed flashes all over the place. But Arkansas's inability to keep the roster consistent around him and all of the moving parts, plus some injuries that slowed him up for a little while, and possibly maybe not a scheme fit, especially last year at Arkansas after Kendall Briles left to go to TCU. He now moves on. He's jumped on the Gus bus in Orlando at UCF, and a more perfect fit for his talents could not be Gus Malzahn's offense. We had Gus on the show last week, and he talked about how he likes the quarterbacks that are bigger and mobile and big arms. He had Cam Newton at Auburn. He now has KJ Jefferson. Not saying KJ Jefferson is Cam Newton, but, I mean, if you look at this guy and said, who does he remind you most of? At 6'5", about 225, 230 pounds, moving around with a big laser rocket arm, I would say he is very Cam Newton-like. Very Cam Newton-like, from the same category of quarterback as Cam Newton, and Gus Malzahn made him a Heisman Trophy winner and the first overall pick in the draft. Number 3, Kyle McCord at Syracuse. This dude was 11-1. Let me walk a little closer to the camera and say this. He was 11-1. 11-1. Now look, I get it. He had Marvin Harrison Jr. and he had Emeka Egbuka and all of that, and there were times where, yes, he did not look like his talent matched the rest of the guys around. But he was 11-1 in the Big Ten, which is supposed to be this Super 2 conference, right, everybody? And what did Ohio State do? Kyle, you probably need to get in the portal. So he jumps into a program at Syracuse with a new head coach in Fran Brown, who's like, you know what? I'll take a guy who is 11-1. I need someone here who's a veteran who knows how to win. And look, Syracuse has a long way to go. And there has not been excitement around that football program in a long time. They are at best in the middle of the pack in the ACC. But if they can show some strength and build some momentum and get people excited about playing for Fran Brown, a lot of that's on the shoulders of Kyle McCord, who, again, I repeat, was 11-1 as a starter. His only loss as the starting quarterback was to the eventual undefeated national champion. 11-1. That's a key thing to remember about him. He was 11-1. Now, I get it. Not every 11-1 is equal. But it's a valuable stat to remember when you're talking about a guy who's about to lead your offense. He at least knows how not to lose games, which is a big deal. If you have a quarterback who knows how not to lose, then you can maybe teach him how to win, especially if he knows how not to lose a game. Kyle McCord certainly knew that. Yes, the talent around him at Ohio State, way better than what he's going to have at Syracuse, but still 11-1. Number 2, Grayson McCall at NC State. This is a guy who's been dominating at Coastal Carolina his entire career, but now he moves up to the big boys in the P4 with NC State, a program that has just been on the cusp of being like really relevant. They're really good defensively. They're okay on offense. They're not, Virginia Tech at the end of Beamer bad on offense. They're not Iowa bad on offense. They're just kind of okay. This is a guy who can elevate their game quite a bit. I think that's what they thought they were going to have eventually with Devin Leary. Devin Leary got hurt in the middle of his last year at NC State, then transferred last year to Kentucky. Grayson McCall, his last year will be at NC State to see if he can get some more bump for the NFL and to see if he can win in a power conference. Look, NC State, Dave Doran doing a really good job at most things there, but they haven't really had a quarterback to take him over the top, and perhaps that is Grayson McCall, and he has to prove it to not only himself but the NFL scouts and the people in the ACC that he's out there to win games. And number 1, Blake Shapen at Mississippi State. Maybe I'm too close to this one. Maybe I'm a little too close to this one. But we saw Blake his entire career here at Baylor. He is a very skilled athlete, but maybe not that formed of a quarterback, more or less. And maybe he was in the wrong system the last couple of years. But as he moves into Jeff Lebby's system at Mississippi State, can he be there and can he prove that he wasn't just a bus driver? Because I think sometimes that was the label he was given. Can he win in the SEC? That's going to be a big jump for him, especially after the last season and a half of struggles that Blake Shapen had within the offense. Now, I can tell you, as someone who covered him closely here at Baylor, last year's Baylor's offense, Blake Shapen was not any one of the top 5 problems that they had. He was really kind of the engine that made it go. It'll be interesting to see him work in a spread offense around him that will maybe highlight some of his skills a little bit better than the wide zone did. And we'll see if Jeff Lebby can really be that quarterback whisperer that he is known to be over the years. That's going to do it for the top 5. We're going to wrap it up right now.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Brought to you by TexasBeefHouse.com. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com for more information, and including the fact that May is grilling month, and all of the beef that you want is there. Also, this note, the 7th annual Waco Goodfellas Crawfish Boil coming up Saturday. Garrett Ross would love to just jump right into that. At Lakeside Bar from 12 until 5, crawfish, drinks, games, and raffles. Britt Kerr and Sloppy Joe Band will be live. Help a Kid. Waco Goodfellas, they do a great job. My good friend Randy Crook, and among others, raising money for the underprivileged and for those kids who need it. They do this something like a big event for Christmas so that some young children will have Christmas gifts under their tree. Otherwise, they would not.
Unbelievable. And not only that, let me tell you about the Waco Goodfellas. They will, if you're here in town and you want to donate, that's a great cause to donate to. They will, they do their Christmas toy drive, but everybody else who does a Christmas toy drive, they help them out too. So we've done some did some years past, and we would be there, and then randomly a guy from the Goodfellas would come and be like, "Hey, we got 6 bikes here for you."
We did.
They're fantastic.
They are very giving. Randy Crook, among others. Thanks for that. So that's thanks, Garrett. You ought to go jump head first into the
check that out.
crawfish boil. All right. Thanks today, Paul. We have an intern. James, of course, is a part of what we do now throughout the summer. Emery Winter is back from his vacation. I don't think that was what it was. He just disappeared. Hey. Jack McKenzie, where's he at today?
Jack had to drive some friends to the airport.
Okay.
So, by the way, James has a very big new job. He's going to run our TikTok and Instagram for us. So we are now on TikTok.
You fired me from that, huh?
Yeah, I know. Like, so Smokey, if you really like watching Smokey dance, like we're going to have him do like the neon moon thing.
What about Snapchat?
Yeah,
we'll do Snapchat.
I don't know if we're quite to Snapchat. He could. We'd tell him do a Snapchat.
We don't need to be. We don't need to be. All right. Garrett Ross, thank you for weaving through a lot of what we did today, all of what we did today. Thanks to our sponsors every single day as we continue to grow. Thank you. If you don't mind, if you haven't yet, hit the like and subscribe button and pass along this show to a friend if they love college athletics. For Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina, I'm David Smoak. Back again tomorrow. Sonny Dykes, Mac Rhodes, just a couple of the names we'll have. This is 365 Sports. Tonight at 10:30 on the CW, it's 365 Sports Tonight. Good night.